Aboard Flight 1969, service to JetNation Radio.
Look at what a leader this guy is.
Bolt is fighting for his job this year.
This is what quarterbacks are made of.
Doug Middleton get a 50-yard onside kick. How stupid can you possibly be making that much money?
Folks, grab a snack. Let's go to eat a goddamn snack. And join Joe Blewett and Glenn Naughton for JetNation Radio.
And you are listening to another edition, the third edition of the new video JetNation Radio, along with the just the podcast app that you can listen on to as well. Glenn, lots to talk about this week. A lot of just kind of random topics, kind of a different show than we usually do, where we go over the games, and that's really it. We're going to do some studs and duds of the year, which is pretty similar. We're going to look at the current state of the Jets, what our expectations are for the rest of the season, et cetera, et cetera. But before we get into all that, had to say what's up to you. What's up, man?
Hey, good to see you, Joe. You know, the bye week always means a little bit less to talk about, but in a season where there's so much emphasis on growth and improvement, there are still topics to be discussed about young guys getting playing time, some young guys not getting playing time. And, you know, look, it's a weird thing. You know, it's mathematically the Jets are still in the playoff hunt. You want to say it's impossible, but there are so many bad teams that, I mean, I still don't see it happening. I'm not going to sit here and say I think they're making the playoffs, but I could see this team kind of hanging around in the playoff picture for at least a couple more weeks. And let's face it, by now we thought they'd be, you know, 2-8 or 3-7 or something along those lines and out of it. But saw a stat the other day, I think it was Connor Rogers, I could be wrong, who said that if the Jets had one more win, they'd be in the playoffs, and if they had one more loss, they'd be picking in the top 5. So it just goes to show you what a glut of mediocrity there is right now with the Jets kind of lingering with a lot of other teams.
Yeah, we're going to talk about where we expect them to go the last 6 games of the season, which I don't think any of us are going to say, okay, well, they're going to win, 5 out of the last 6 and make it to the playoffs, unless you will, Glenn, because I know you do have some wine on hand that you will be probably drinking during the show. So, but to call in, as always, it's, well, not, we changed, but it's now 1-669-900-0020, sorry, 6833. The PIN is 989-311-8641. And then the machine, whatever it is, just says something. You hit pound. I think you hit pound again. If you're just calling in via video, Skype, whatever it may be, or if you have Zoom, you call in 989-311-8641. Glenn, we had a couple of technical errors last week. We had a little bit of scratchiness. We had some delays in the video where I don't know if you were watching the video for a while where it kind of lagged. But I noticed once you started the video over at the same point, it kind of caught up a little bit. So we're trying to fix those things. As you can notice, I don't have the big halo over my head right now. It's pretty high-tech stuff. I actually just took a big wrestling mat and just put it, standing vertically up. So some improvements that are being made to JetNation Radio right now. And I also called Xfinity and upgraded our, internet speeds. So we'll see if it works. Hopefully it does. You can leave us a review if you want, which we hope that you do. We got one this week from HTonLax22. He says, the bee's knees, 5 stars. If you want in-depth, honest, and knowledgeable updates on the Jets, then look no farther. These guys know their X's and O's, and they get into far more detail than you'll ever hear on New York sports radio. I agree. Out of all the Jets podcasts, this is by far my favorite. Joe wants to be a coach, or definitely wants to be a coach. I don't know about that. Hey.
No, it's good stuff, man. It's appreciated,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Joe, I looked at some of those reviews the other day, and I started to wonder if you were creating a bunch of different iTunes accounts and writing all these reviews.
Well,
there was some high praise on there. I was pretty impressed with some of the comments, and I started to think, is Joe doing all this? Are these Joe's reviews?
Yeah, well, we actually got a couple when it wasn't our show, and then we got a couple when it was Brandon and his trio there, and then we got a couple when it was me and Brandon. And then we got the one guy who just gave us 1 star and said nah, and I think that's because of my stance on Colin Kaepernick. Which
I remember that one. That one came
Yeah.
a day or two after you criticize Colin Kaepernick. And look, it's a polarizing issue. It upsets some.
That we are not getting into.
Oh, God, no.
Because we're going to get another bad review from it. But yeah, we got I would say 23 out of 25 are really good reviews. I have about, 23 family members. So that adds up pretty well right there. But no, we appreciate everybody who did leave us a review. Obviously, like I said, it helps us get out to people. And the more people see it, the more it helps us. Then hopefully we can start getting some upgrades. Maybe I'll get a Jets backdrop. Maybe Glenn will get a few new hats or another Jets flag behind him or a couple hats, whatever it may be. But I did a review of the Jets Week 3 Dolphins game because I was in Georgia, so I couldn't do it. I wasn't going to sit in my hotel room the entire day and miss out on the vacation because I wanted to do a film review. So I did that this week. Glenn, is there anything that you put up this week that you want to shout out really quick before we get into everything?
Just if people want to take a look, I don't do it every week because let's face it, there's not always enough going on. But I try to do a little thing I call Tuesday tidbits, just random thoughts, links to previous articles. When there's stuff going on. Because let's face it, this for us, unfortunately, isn't a full-time job. I don't have time to do an article on every single thought that pops into my head. But some of it I think is, if you mention it and a couple people are interested, it's worth doing. Big thing this week, though, and I actually will take a minute because, like you said, we don't have a game to review. We have a little extra time this week. And it was a question I was going to ask you. And I think that I think it's worth considering when you look at the situation with Todd Bowles and whether or not he goes to Josh McCown. Some people feel like he should already. We've been back and forth about whether or not that should happen. But the more I think about it, and I can't remember if I've mentioned it on the air previously, but even though I've been critical of Todd Bowles with this whole decision, with the quarterbacks, in fairness to him, without really knowing what's been said between him and ownership behind closed doors, is it fair to criticize him? Because let's face it, Joe, as much as I want to see Bryce Petty or any other Jets fan wants to see Bryce Petty just to see what you have, so to speak, can you blame Todd Bowles if he, if in his mind he is coaching for his job, he doesn't have time to let's see what this project quarterback has. Now, the flip side to that is that, yeah, he may feel like he's coaching for his job. And I know Woody Johnson is in London now, and he's not the quote-unquote owner, but I still believe, he's legally he can't have any dealings with the team. But I'm sure him and his brother Chris Johnson spoke when Chris took over. But, I kind of feel like without knowing what he said behind closed doors, if they haven't told Todd Bowles, look, Todd, because what he did say is what I was saying before. What he did say before the season, don't judge the season on wins and losses, which to me is a clear indicator that he's given the front office and the head coach a little bit of rope to kind of say, I get it. The talent's not there. It's a rebuild. Let's see effort. Let's see improvement. If that's the only mandate from ownership and Todd Bowles is still sticking with a 38-year-old quarterback, that's pretty foolish. Because if they're being given a year to work out the kinks and see what some of these kids have, he's got to go to Petty or Hack. Petty obviously much better in the preseason. But without knowing, if he's not been told, if he's not been assured by ownership that, look, Todd, if you win 4 or 5 games, we're still going to retain you as long as the effort's there. If they haven't said that, Josh McCown more than Bryce Petty, and you can't really fault him for trying to keep his job.
Yeah, no, and Glenn, we talked about this a little bit last week. We were just talking about the quarterbacks and Bulls and McCagnon in general, and we don't really know what's behind the decisions they make. And obviously, if we had, kind of I guess we were flying the wall in the meeting rooms and, Woody Johnson said, okay, you have full reign, you're coming back next year, start the young guys and play the young guys if you feel like you want to do that. And he wasn't playing the young guys, or he wasn't playing the young guys by this point, coming up to this game with the Carolina Panthers, then yeah, I would be frustrated. But the fact is we don't really know what they're saying to him behind closed doors or what assurances he's getting or not getting. So that's really it's really tough to criticize. We can obviously give our opinions, like I just said. Okay, well, if he's having the reign to be able to do whatever he wants and he has job assurances, then yeah, what the hell are you doing? But we don't know that, so we can't hammer him for not doing it at the same time. That's at least my opinion, Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like I said, I've been tough on Bowles, but I kind of took a step back and said, look, for me to criticize this guy for not going to a younger quarterback, It's irresponsible of me. It's irresponsible of anybody. We talk and debate and argue, and let's face it, we don't know what the hell's going on behind closed doors, but we love this team and we love talking football, so everyone's going to throw out their opinions, which is fine. But it's just, to me, not fair if you don't know what's been said. Maybe Todd Bowles is thinking, I'd love to go to Bryce Petty. I don't think he's saying that. But my point is, without knowing what's going on, it's not really fair to criticize him. But again, the one caveat being, if we're to take Woody Johnson's public comments to heart, where he said, don't judge this season on wins and losses, that kind of tells me this year's not about wins and losses. So that's the part of me that says, why don't you go to the kid? But again, we don't know, but we do kind of have an idea.
Yeah, and that's if we take for what they say with 100% certainty that's what they mean. Because obviously Woody Johnson's going to come out and say that it's not based. Well, not obviously, but he's going to come out and say it's not based on wins, because I think he has some type of inkling that the Jets are not going to make the playoffs this year. Looking at the roster and the veterans they released, Decker and Marshall and Harris and et cetera, et cetera. But no, good. It's a good conversation. I'm sure it's going to come up later in the show too when we start talking about these young quarterbacks. If we do get into that, we'll see how much time we do have, because even though we don't have a game to talk about, Glenn, we do this 52 weeks a year, maybe like 49. We miss a couple, maybe 2-3 weeks a year, but we're very good at making up topics, and there's not a game to talk about. It's just what we
Gotta do it.
So, but we have a new sponsor, Glenn, which is OddsShark. OddsShark is your one-stop shop for the latest betting resources, information, and odds you can trust. Get the expert sports coverage and detailed matchup predictions straight from the OddsShark supercomputer. Looking for statistics and trends on an upcoming game, OddsShark has that too. And the best of all, it's free. The experts at OddsShark provide in-depth analysis for each game, packed with stats, numbers, and trends that will help make you make sharp picks on game day. Before the next Jets game, head on over to www.oddshark.com. That's ODDSSHARK.com, and start playing like a shark today, Glenn. Are you playing like a shark, Glenn?
I actually did look at their website. I did like it. I like the layout, but it wouldn't let me play because I don't know if it's because it's an overseas thing. I know there are several things I've tried. I can't do FanDuel. I have money in my FanDuel account, and I can't use it from the UK.
They don't like you Brits.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's but I do, luckily, it's not easy. It's not hard to find a betting shop here. I have 3 different places I can go place bets within a 10-minute walk of my house. So I do, I take the opportunity to lose money every week, and thank goodness for that.
So search up OddsShark on your phone, and then take that over to the betting shop, as you call them in England or wherever you are, all that fancy mumbo jumbo that you guys have. But yeah, like you said before, with the Jets being out of the playoffs and in the playoffs, 1 game difference. Like you said, I didn't even comment on it. The AFC is just so beyond bad this year.
It's ridiculous.
It's the Patriots versus the Steelers, and for the most part, I think in the playoffs the Patriots are 6-2 versus Steelers. I could be wrong, but I think I'm pretty close. I think the Patriots are going to spank them in the playoffs like they always do, because Tom Brady just knows their schemes at this point, because Tomlin's been there for so long. But Glenn, let's get into some of the super studs and duds segment of this bye week special. The Jets are 4-6. Like you said, no game to specifically talk about. So we're going to do offensive studs and duds and defensive studs and duds. We're not going to take it as long as we usually do because obviously we don't have specific plays to necessarily talk about. But Glenn, let's start off with, let's think. It's like a double negative. The season so far has been a negative and a positive, but they're on a losing record. The offense has been the most of that losing record, in my opinion. So let's start off with the worst of the worst, with the duds of the offense.
The duds on offense. All right. So I'm going to go with my number 3. I mean, it's if you've been listening to the show and paying attention, you know exactly where these 3 duds are going to be. But to me, it's the biggest reason the team is where they are. My number 3 is going to be a very, very disappointing season from left guard James Carpenter. Big expectations coming into this season, and I have because he's such a, or has been such a good player, and he's such a high character guy. I hate to blame the coaching, But when a guy goes from being as good as he was, and it's not like he turned 35 recently, he's still young enough that he should be playing at a high level. He's a high character guy by all accounts. He's been a very good player in the past, and all of a sudden his play has really fallen off, and he is one of my 3 duds on offense, and a big reason why this team has had a hard time moving the ball. And some guys who play not very far from him are going to be also included on this list, as I'm sure you would imagine.
Yeah, Glenn, this like the defensive, like some of the other lists were kind of like I was not struggling to find who to make the stud or the dud, but the offense in terms of duds was pretty damn easy. And my number 3, and I kind of did this like relative to expectations, not like, okay, well, let's say James Carpenter is better than this guy I'm about to say, but it's kind of relative to where we thought they were going to be coming into the year. So if I thought James Carpenter was going to be a Pro Bowler and he's playing like garbage, then he's going to move up my list. That's just kind of how I did it. We didn't really.
Listen, if a guy's not, part of it is expectations. If you're getting paid to be a great player and you have been a great player in the past, and like I said, it's not like we're talking about a running back who had a great year at 29 and now he turned 30 and you expect a drop off. There was no reasonable, no logical reason to expect this type of drop off from him this season. And you have to factor that in.
Yeah, exactly. So my number 3 is Wesley Johnson. I know we don't use Pro Football Focus too much. We use it for like I said, specific. Okay, well he blitzed this many times, or he played this many snaps in coverage, or this many times in the run game. This is where he played, etc. But I'll use it sometimes, and just to give people, I guess, a realm of thinking or whatever. But Wesley Johnson is Pro Football Focus 37th out of 37 guards in the entire league, with a grade of 35.7 this year, which is just beyond bad. And we didn't really even need the grades to tell us that, Glenn. We saw this over the entire year, over these 10 games. Wesley Johnson has just been beyond bad, where last year he was below average, but he was okay for a guy, stepping in for Nick Mangold, who had some injuries. We didn't know what he would be, and we were not, I'm not going to say thrilled with it, but we were like, okay, maybe we'll see if he grows and what we have going into the future with him. And this year he's just been beyond bad as a guard, or not as a guard, as a center. He's one of the positions, or that center is one of the positions the Jets are going to have to immediately address as quick as they can, because he's the brain of that offensive line at times too. And obviously it's not like every team has a base of, okay, well, he calls these protections, or the center calls this many protections, and the quarterback calls this many protections. This is what you can call, and this is what you can't call, and every team has to kind of follow that guideline. So I'm assuming at this point where McCown's probably calling more protections and calling more stuff out, because he is the savvy veteran. Say what you will, but he has seen thousands of snaps in the NFL, if not tens of thousands or whatever it may be. I guess tens of thousands with film. But Wesley Johnson's a younger guy, and I'm not sure he's calling too much, but still, to have a guy like Nick Mangold, with Sanchez, we saw how big that was, and having Wesley Johnson there helping McCown call out some things and identify the mic, et cetera, is just probably not helping him at all. So even beyond the snap, pre-snap, he's probably terrible for McCown too. So he gets my number 3, I guess, just kind of relative to expectations. But
yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with everything he said. Expectations were higher, but it hasn't panned out. My number 2 is James Carpenter's partner in crime, Brian Winters. He got that $8 million a year contract this offseason. As I said last week, I believe it was last week, I can't really fault Mike McCagnon for that. You got to keep your good players. Winters was a guy who looked like he came into his own last season after struggling. He struggled his first couple of years. You kind of expected that, being a project, converted tackle from a small school. Played well. Not great, but he played, I'd say, above average last season. And this season he's been a disaster. And you can't not have him on this list. So Brian Winters is my number 2, and I'm really hoping that something changes. These guys, it feels strange. Carpenter and Winters were 2 of the guys you felt like you could rely on to play at a high level, but that hasn't been the case. So he's on there for me.
Yeah, let's see. I don't know if this is going to. Oh yeah, see, upgraded internet speed. I can play videos now, Glenn. So I guess I'm gonna scroll through some of the Winters play. We're not gonna go through them, but kind of like I said, just give yourself a background, and you could have a visual as we talk of just how I guess, kind of bad he has been this year. And I agree with you. He is my number 2 as well, Glenn. And this is another guy, 54th or the 54th guard out of however many guards, but still, regardless, a guy who's making $8 million, and he's just playing absolutely terrible this year. He doesn't even look like he's supposed to be on the field. I wouldn't even call him, where James Carpenter, I've called him a below average starter at this point. I think both of them are even worse at this point, just breaking down the film and really watching it week after week after week. And you see how, I guess a phrase I like to say is consistently inconsistent, and they've been really, really bad. He is making, like I said, $8 million this year. Next year, I looked it up on overthecap.com, $7 million next year, and every single penny of that is guaranteed to him. So if they cut him, it's $7 million in dead money. So they're probably not going to. They're probably going to have to deal with him for another year, and hopefully, obviously, he bounces back. He's a young-ish player. So let's hope he bounces back the next 6 games, and next year he plays well, and then we'll see where we are after that. But so far, he has been one of the worst starting centers starting right guards in the entire NFL right now. It's been really, really disappointing.
Yeah, and he's not going anywhere. Most GMs, most teams will, when they structure a long-term big money deal, they'll load up in the early years, guarantee the first year or two, and beyond that is when they have some maneuverability. You see the same thing with Muhammad Wilkerson's deal. So, yeah, Brian Winters isn't going anywhere for the next, at least he's here at least this year and next.
Yeah, okay, Glenn. So let's move on to your number 1 offensive dud of the year.
Number 1 is the man in the middle, Wesley Johnson. And part of me, honestly, in looking at how bad Carpenter and Winters have been, I can't help but wonder how much of that is to do with Wesley Johnson in the middle there. Are they trying to sort of keep one eye on their assignment, knowing that, Johnson's probably going to have a hard time in the middle with his, because that's I'm not going to lie, it's a little bit of wishful thinking. My hope is that, okay, next year you either draft a center, sign a center, and then that's going to help fix the guards, with better play that they don't have to worry about. But, that remains to be seen. But Wesley Johnson's been absolutely atrocious from beginning to end. As we said, he's been, pretty consistently. I think almost from by week 2 or 3, I think he was sort of a bottom 4 or 5 guard on PFF. And as we've said before, PFF isn't gospel, but I feel pretty comfortable saying if they have you rated in the bottom 10, then you're not playing very well. If they have you rated dead last, you're among the worst. So even if PFF is off by a little bit, Wesley Johnson's still one of the worst centers in the NFL. And as I've said before, I hate to say that because having seen him up close, he's an intense guy. He's a fiery competitor, but he's just not getting it done.
Yeah, and I said this a couple of times, and I think some of it is, okay, well, he's having to keep an eye on, Wesley Johnson's guy, or maybe he's on a combo block. He's trying to create some push, or some extra pushes to stay on the defensive tackle or the nose tackle, whoever it may be. You might have to stay on him for a quarter or more of a second, not let him getting in position to, get on a linebacker on the combo block, whatever it may be. But still, like even plays like this where you see James Carpenter coming to the second level on a linebacker, and for a guy who's supposed to be a pro ball guard, you can't hold the block on a linebacker. And it's not like he's using his agility to get by him. Like you could just see he just out physicals James Carpenter here. Like how is that happening? So I agree. Well, I guess I kind of got off topic there, guys, because I was watching the video. But I agree with you on Wesley Johnson. He was just my number 3 because I didn't really have too high of expectations for him. I maybe thought coming into this year he would be a guy who's not necessarily even average, a guy who's not going to get your quarterback killed. And he's been the exact opposite of that. He's been terrible. But like I said, relative to expectations, he was my number 3. James Carpenter is my number 1. He got the 68th guard in the league. I don't know how many guards I have, but still 68th. You figure, 32 teams times 2, there's 64. So, he's supposed to be a backup. And obviously it's not like exact math, but he's either one of the worst left guards in the entire league or one of the worst guards in the entire league, or I guess he would be an okay backup at this point. And for a guy who coming into this year, Glenn, how many people were saying, oh, well, he's the best player on offense. He's the guy who can make the all-pro teams.
And rightfully so. He was the last couple of years. He was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we see plays like this where he just does not look like himself, and he's really kind of reverting back to what we saw with the Seahawks. And here, I'm kind of just scrolling down. All I do is keyword search Carpenter, so there actually is some good plays. But here he gets beat by Myles Garrett for the sack. I think it was the first play of the game, Glenn. Was that the first play, the second play, whatever it was, the first pass of the game?
It was Myles Garrett's first play.
Yeah, I remember that starting off one of the worst games I've watched in a long time. That Browns game and the Bucks game were just absolutely terrible this year. But yeah, he gets my number one. Like I said, relative to expectations, and like you said, he deserved those expectations of how well he was playing his first 2 years as a Jet. Yeah. But this year is just beyond bad. He's been really, really bad. But moving on, Glenn, let's go, I guess, to the studs. Yeah, let's go to the studs of the offense. Give me your number 3.
My number 3, show the old man a little love, man. Josh McCown. He's done a nice job. This offense was expected to be bottom 3 in the league. They're kind of middle of the pack. He's, no, he has not been great, but he's managed games well. He's put them in position to win several times. Granted, he has had a few games where he melted down and the offense stalled in the fourth quarter. But at the same time, at that point, they'd put up enough points on the board that if the defense could have gotten a couple stops, the Jets win those games. So he hasn't been great, but he's, top 3, top 4, whatever he is in completion percentage in the NFL. And he's not doing it with dinking and dunking. He's kind of middle of the pack, average yards per pass. So, give credit where it's due. He's not a great player, but he's better than a lot of people thought he would be. And who the hell thought he would stay healthy this long?
Yeah, I definitely didn't expect him to be healthy this long, Glenn. I agree with that. And yeah, like you said, relative to expectations, he's been pretty good. He's been better than I thought he would be. And obviously there's still those games where he's going to throw a bad pass, or he's going to make a dumb read, or he's going to try to force the ball before the half, or even before overtime, like in the Dolphins game, or make an inaccurate ball, or think he has too much arm strength, and et cetera, et cetera. He's been on how many ever different teams? Glenn, 10 teams throughout his 12-year, 14-year career, whatever it is. I don't follow how much year he's been in. I know he's 38 years old. I know he's about to be 39. He's been on,
I think this is 15th year.
497 teams throughout his career. So I'm not trying to, keep there's only so much space in my brain, Glenn, where I can't keep Josh McCown's stats and how many teams he's been on and how long he's been in the league in my head, because it would push some of the others.
Off the top of my head, I want to say 15 years and 8 teams.
Okay, so yeah, somewhere relatively close.
Well, I'm ballparking.
Yeah, no, yeah, so that's what I would say, somewhere right around there too. But actually, we have a caller, Glenn, so we'll get to them before I get to my number 3. It is 407. Who is this and what's up?
Hello, it's Bay Rich Jet.
Oh, what's
Checking
up, man?
in with you guys.
How we doing, Rich?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry I'm not doing video. But I'm actually traveling. I'm on the road.
You can't be as good looking as Glenn. I understand it.
I can't be good looking as either one of you guys.
Yeah. No. Have you? Well, I hope you checked it out on video, Rich, because
Yes, I did. Yes, I have. And I restate, I cannot be as good looking as both of you guys.
No, Glenn has like the salt and pepper beard thing going on. I can't match it. I don't have those genes. I can get like a little bit of like a goatee thing going, but not as full as Glenn can. Glenn's gonna have to grow it out. I feel like Glenn can get a caveman beard going, I think.
I can.
I will give you guys kudos. And again, since I'm on the road, I can't bust out my jet gear. And I would bust out the jet gear if I was on video, but I can't. But I do appreciate you guys busting out some sort of jet gear on your show. Again, it's a Jets video show. So, but, yeah. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Rich. We appreciate you for calling in. Now, is there anything specific you want to talk about, or do you want us to fire away with some questions?
Well, it just brings back my question that I had maybe the previous time that I called, and we saw the Tampa Bay game. And I'm calling about the Tampa Bay game. We saw the game, and again, and yet it was another winnable game. Again, it was just underachieving game, and again, I can understand that it's a 50-50 thing as far as blame game. You blame the O-line and you blame the defense. I think the defense kept them in the game as long as they could, and the offensive line had a chance the offense had a chance to win the game, and so I saw the last game where our offensive coordinator just really I think that he's leaning to more of a run-heavy game because he was criticized by Forte and running the ball enough and yada yada and all that stuff. And so my question would be is, do you blame this on the coaching and the play calling on the offensive side or whatever? Because they threw that pass to Robbie, they were able to get something going towards the end. Was that garbage time, or was it just something that they could have done earlier? And at what point in time, whatever, are we going to say, hey, is it coaching or is it playing? And again, I'm happy with the way the season is going. I'm a happy Jets guy, whatever, because I see the potential in the direction that we're going. I think McKinnon is doing a great job. I think we're a couple of players away as far as O-line, addressing the O-line, getting a good quarterback and a good pass rusher. And I think we're going to be in there, maybe a good cornerback, a couple of maybe extra cornerbacks or whatever to get the job done. But again, I just didn't like the way the play calling was in the O-line. I think I don't know if he's being bullied and whatever to just run a lot of, run heavy calls. What do you guys, I'm looking for, what do you guys think?
Glenn, you want?
Well, I think I mentioned it last week, and I think John Morton's done a nice job on the season, and he should be commended as a first-year offensive coordinator. But if you want to talk about the offense and whether or not you put it on the coaches or the players, it's a combination of both. But I really do feel like that we've seen a couple of instances this year. The Tampa Bay game being one, but again, we've seen it the last couple of years. I mentioned it last week. Just the lack of urgency in crunch time when this team needs a couple of quick scores and there's only a couple minutes left in the game. Either we're not seeing no huddle, or we're just seeing a lack of just a bit of lackadaisical heading up to the line, that type of stuff. And the Robbie Anderson thing, or the lack of deep shots to Robbie Anderson, I also addressed last week. Said it was really frustrating because that's at least my personal opinion is when you because let's face it, as Jets fans we've seen plenty of struggling offenses that can't score, and I always feel like if you do have one or two guys they can make something happen with the ball in their hands, or who can get open down the field, why not take some shots? And I feel like the Jets backed off of that from Robbie once they got the single interception last week. We didn't see a lot of deep shots to him until late in the game.
Yeah, and Glenn, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think it was actually with you, Rich, when you.
Yeah, it was. But your guys' take is the players, and I can understand the players have to go out there and execute. But let's go back several weeks ago where, Forte was criticizing the offense coordinator and the play calling or whatever, not running the ball enough or whatever. And so we do have a young offensive coordinator, which I think I agree with the way he's running the offense. I think he's everything John Gruden has said when he endorsed him as a guy, as an offensive coordinator. I think he has some growing to do or whatever. But I feel like he's, it's like a lot run heavy. And then towards the end, it was proven to the fact or whatever that, maybe throwing the ball deep. I understand they threw the ball deep and the pass protection wasn't there and it was a shoddy ball and he underthrew it and he got intercepted. But it shouldn't, restrict you from going back to it. And then it was more of a run heavy type of offense. And
well, Rich,
I saw the videos that you guys posted, and the box was stacked to play to stop us from the run.
Yeah, but Rich, can I just comment on it, because the Jets dropped back to throw the ball 39 times. They only ran the ball 19 times that game. So it's not like they were running the ball 75% of the game and just couldn't move the ball. They actually passed the ball almost actually double more times. That's only attempts. That's not even counting the sacks that McCown took. So they probably dropped back to throw the ball almost 50 times. They only ran the ball 19 times.
Sure, and sure, but the blame goes to the offensive line, and I understand that the offensive line was struggling at that game.
Well, and Rich, let me continue, because when I said this the other week and I was talking about who the blame goes to, I said both. When I was talking about the coaching, I was talking about some of the decisions, like Glenn said, the lack of urgency at the end of games, lack of urgency before half sometimes. Some of the play calling is a little bit spotty, but overall we've been happy. But it's the players too. The lack of talent. The Jaguars game, they let the Jaguars almost get back into the game. The Dolphins game, lack of urgency. The penalties, the offensive line not being able to support a young or an old veteran journeyman quarterback who you can't have McCown. Like McCown, I believe it was versus the Patriots. He dropped back 50 plus times, and that's a player issue because the offensive line can't block. They can't support this offense. So while I do think it's both, where I do think the coaches, like we've talked about, and I brought up many times with some of their decisions that I don't necessarily like, where we've highlighted specific decisions plenty of times. It's a lot more of lack of talent from the players, at least in my opinion. I would lean more heavily towards that, where how is Morton really supposed to score a ton of points and erase the not erase the Tampa Bay game, just in general, how is he supposed to score a lot of points with these talent? Curse, and I'm not completely supporting more because, like I said, there's been some sketchy calls where we brought up that counter play last week where I didn't like that call. But Curse is a number 3, number 4 receiver. He's not a number 1. Robbie Anderson's a deep threat, even though albeit a very good one at this point. No offensive line, no real huge breakout playmakers. So you could blame the coaches, but I think it's more of the players, Rich. I do. That's not to say that the coaches don't get any blame, though.
No, I totally agree. So here's a couple of questions that I have, and I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but it kind of like both on the offensive line, on the offensive side of the ball. Number one is, do you feel like the offensive coordinator is being influenced or whatever, try to be run heavy in the last since Forte made his comment? Number one, and number two is, do you agree with what I say is that I think Demario Stewart is being underutilized?
Glenn, go ahead with that. Because
sorry, I got the question about the run heavy offense. About is who being underutilized?
Stewart.
Stewart.
Well, yeah, both those things. I think that I think that the John Morton is, when you have a rookie coordinator, I don't think that Matt Forte's comments are going to impact him. John Morton knows that if he does his job well, he's going to be around a lot longer than Matt Forte, and he's not going to tailor his game plan to the opinions of his players, because if he does that every week, then what happens when a receiver says we're not throwing enough and a running back says we're not running enough? You can't. I kind of throw that out the window, because Matt Forte was critical of John Morton for not running the ball enough a few weeks ago. How does Matt Forte ignore the fact that they were averaging about 1.5 yards per carry? Yep. You can't keep running the ball and getting zero push from your O-line. Your running backs are getting hit, anywhere from 2 yards in front of or 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and there's just no room for them to go anywhere. John Morton in those situations has no choice but to open it up. So the criticism there, I think, was unwarranted. I don't think any coordinator worth his salt is gonna tailor his game plan based on a veteran who's got 1 or 2 years left in the league. So that covers that. But as far as our Demario Stewart, I think a lot of Jets fans want to see more of him. Despite what Todd Bowles is saying, it really looks like Chad Hansen has jumped him on the depth chart, and we'll find out more this week. Last week it kind of gave Todd, the Jets had the excuse of, not the excuse, but the injury to our Demario Stewart gave him the opportunity to play Chad Hansen ahead of him without any questions being asked. But in the previous week, Chad Hansen out-repped him. The week before that, our Demario Stewart wasn't even active. So it appears Hansen has jumped him on the depth chart. We'll find out this week because our Demario Stewart, I would assume, is good to go. And I want both of them on the field. I mean, Chad Hansen, he had a few catches last week. He looked good, not great. He did what they asked of him. But this is what we need to see. We need to see these young guys play. And I agree 100% that, we need some more Demario Stewart, but let's see some more Chad Hansen as well.
Well, yeah, I agree with what you're saying or whatever, but I don't know if what the play calling is and how they're targeting these individual players or whatever. I'm looking at it. Maybe you guys, since you guys do a phenomenal job as far as film coverage, breaking down the film or whatever, maybe you guys can break down the film between Hansen and Demario Stewart and see who's doing the better route running and all that stuff.
Yeah,
because I was really impressed. I was really impressed with Stewart at the beginning of the year. I thought he was doing fairly well. He was on his way.
He looked good.
And so Yeah, and so I understand you want to go with the hot hand or whatever, and I know Curly was playing lights out and all that stuff, and you want to do that. But again, if you look at the Patriots or whatever, how they how they did with Amendola and the little receivers, they play multiple slot guys at the same time. Whenever they were able to do something like that. And so I was looking at maybe, I know that Stewart is not the number one, number two, maybe a slot guy, and he's a better slot guy. Maybe if you got Curly and Stewart running, and you might be able to get something going. I don't know what you guys' take is, but maybe I don't know. I got to look at the tape, and I'm not a tape guy like you guys are, so that's why I would yield to your opinion.
Yeah, and I'll definitely, at the end of the year, I'm going to do probably a Stewart, a Hansen review. I probably do most of the young guys. I'm actually doing a noon one now, and next game I'll watch it more too. In terms of specific route running, I'm not looking at their route running because I'm not watching just that player. Like I said before, I kind of just watch a play, and then whatever stands out, I'll highlight it. But yeah, I'll keep a closer eye on both the route running that they run, and specifically how they're trying to use them. And in terms of going, an empty set, 2x2, 3x1, using them both at the same time. The problem with that too is the Jets are having such problems with the offensive line. They're having to keep a tight end or an extra tackle in to block. When you have a good offensive line, you could have 4 or 5 wide, or 4 wide and a running back, whatever it may be. But the Jets a decent amount of time are keeping a tight end in the game and having them block for McCown because the offensive line can't just do it. Matched up 5 on 4 or 5 on 5 or 5 on 6 with the blitz. They're having a really hard time. So that's kind of a problem with the offensive line too, where it affects even the passing game in terms of how many in terms of personnel that they could use. The Patriots use it more because they obviously run a different type of offense than the Jets run. The Jets, a lot of times they have a tight end or 11 personnel, and they have a tight end in and a running back, and then they have 3 receivers. And obviously those 3 receivers, you have Anderson, and you'd have Hansen, you have Curse, or Curly when he's there. So it's hard to kind of force feed them both onto the field when you're still trying to win the game. But I guess I'll keep a closer eye on that, Rich. Next game, I'll make sure to tag you in some Darius Stewart and Chad Hansen.
I watch all your videos. I really do. I support you guys 100%. Your work is not going in vain. I watch it, and I'll try to comment as much as I can or whatever. Obviously, a lot of stuff gets in the way, but I appreciate what you guys are doing. I love your show. I'm calling in, and I support you guys 100%. And I'll leave it with this, and maybe you guys can talk about it when I get off the line here. But where do you think the Jets should go from here? Because it's probably a big topic in the forums as well, as far as should we, the talk about Petty and Hackenberg, and then the talk about, hey, let's see what we, I'm all about, again, just like I call first thing at the beginning of the year is I'm looking for improvement. I'm looking for player development. I'm looking for what do we have going forward, and what do we need. We have a lot of cap space for the off season. What can we fill in free agency? What can we fill via the draft? And that's what I'm looking for moving on. I didn't see us making the playoff this year and any of that stuff. Whatever. I did see us winning more than one game. That's just me as a Jet fan. But what do you guys think about us going forward? Where should we go and try to figure out what we have? I think we need to answer the question, what do we have in quarterback? And I think that they answered that by saying we saw enough of Petty, we saw enough of Hackenberg. We're going to move on and try to address either free agency or the draft. I don't know what you guys think about that. I'll leave it at that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
If we're going to take Todd Bowles at his word, then you just have to believe that these guys aren't good enough. Now, Hackenberg, I believe, isn't good enough, at least from what we saw from him in the Bryce Petty looked good in the preseason, but Todd Bowles says no go. And, again, if we take him at his word, they're not good enough. Where they go from here, I think you have to keep sending McCown out there as long as there's a, regardless of how unlikely it is that they'll make the postseason, just the fact that they're literally a game or two behind the pace, you can't bail on the starters at this point. You lose a couple more in a row, you lose a few games in the standings. I think that's, the unfortunate thing is that even if you were to start Petty this week, for the rest of the season, there's not enough time in the season to get a true accurate read on a quarterback. You can't tell after 6 games if a guy can play or not. So it's the opportunity to quote unquote see what we have, which is what a lot of us wanted. I think that opportunity is gone. I think at best you can take a look at a guy and see if there's a chance that he might be good, down the road. But I'd like to see Petty at some point, but that may not happen.
So what do you see? What do you see the Jets going from here? I mean, other than just going with McCown the rest of the year. Are you saying that we're going to either get one through free agency and move up on a draft and get one?
Well, I'm hoping for both. I say go get Kirk Cousins or go get Alex Smith or go get not Teddy Bridgewater. I'm kind of lukewarm on because he's not really proven enough. But I say get one of those guys and take a quarterback in the first round. I want a guy who's proven he can play, and I want a guy behind him who might be able to play for years behind that.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and Rich, we're gonna get into this more too. That just shows.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm sorry that I called.
No.
I'm sorry to bring it up. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. It's do not worry about it at all. We appreciate callers, and obviously you bring a new topic to the show that we wouldn't have previously discussed, so it adds to the show. So we definitely appreciate you calling in, Rich. We're going to talk about that as well a little bit down the road. So thank you for calling in.
Thanks a lot, Rich.
Hey, no problem, man. I support you guys. Again, I love your videos. I'm sorry you couldn't see me. I'll try to do a better job. But, hey, you guys keep up the good work, man. You got my support 100%.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
And
all right. Take care, guys.
We appreciate that, Rich. And I just wanted to – and while he was saying that just really quick because we do have to get into some other things, Glenn, and, in terms of the rushing to passing, they've rushed the ball 252 times and they've passed the ball 314 times. It's something that we said this entire season that we want them to rush the ball. Well, no, it's something that we've said or that we've wanted. Not that we want them to rush the ball more because they've been terrible at rushing the ball, but we want them to have the ability to be able to rush the ball more because the offensive line is so bad that why are you going to rush the ball when you're getting 3 yards of carry in some games, or some games we've seen where they're literally getting like 1.9 yards per carry or just around 2 yards per carry.
Some games where if they were getting 3 yards of carry, they might have won. But they, it might, sometimes you get a big run and it kind of skews the numbers a little. And, one big run doesn't mean you had a great day. It means you had a great play. And then the rest of the time, I've seen people argue that because I am one of those fans that'll say, well, what did you do without your biggest run? Because that's one play. If your offense was stalled all day long and then you made one play that made the numbers look decent, you didn't really play that well. You had one big run, and then the rest of the time couldn't move the ball. And sometimes you see that. People, it's not a matter of trying to knock a player or knock a team, but one big run doesn't mean you move the ball effectively all day.
Yeah, no, and Glenn, that's a fantastic point because if we both had to choose, okay, well, if he averaged, let's just say Powell, 20 rushes for 100 yards, if he was averaging 5 yards a pop and he was getting consistent, like 4 yards, 6 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, 3 yards, like I'd rather have that than him average, that 20 for 100, he gets 2 yards to carry and then he broke 170-yard run. I'd rather have the consistency. So you do have to look at that. It's all about the consistency. And I say that all the time, Glenn, or we say that all the time, where any player in the NFL or any team or any position group is going to make a play or two a game, but it's how consistently you do that that determines how good you are. So if you have a long run, that was an 80-yard run, so it looks like they ran the ball good all day, but if the rest of the game you were getting 1 yard per carry and you were, like a lot of times the Jets this year, 2nd and 3, they'll have a run play and then it's 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 3. They don't move the chains, or 3rd and 1 and they get stuffed. Like the running game has been terrible. So why are you going to run the ball more when you can't do that? I feel much more comfortable on 3rd, even 3rd and 2. I feel more comfortable with McCown taking a 3-step drop or a 5-step drop than running the ball. So you can't force the run if it's not there. So I'm on the opposite spectrum where I think Rich was saying that he thinks they run the ball too much. I think they don't run the ball enough, at least for McCown. Like I said it before. They shouldn't run the ball more because they can't, but I wish they could,
In a perfect world, they would.
Yes.
But at this point, they can't. So there's no point in getting upset that, they only ran the ball 18 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they average 1.5 yards per carry. That's why.
But
if they're averaging 4 a pop and they're consistently moving the ball down the field, they're going to abandon the run.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be the case. But again, that's why my 3 duds are who they are.
Yeah, exactly. Offensive line has just been absolutely terrible. And your number 3 stud of the offense was McCown Glenn. We talked about him a little bit. Then Rich called in.
Yep.
My number 3, and this is kind of like you have to look past the statistics for this. And we say this all the time. We hate like stats and how people just rely on them. And obviously they're useful, but you have to use them in context of film and actually watching the game and know what you're watching too. But I give it to the Jets running backs. Powell, 93 rushes for 420 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4.5 yards per carry, which is ridiculous. 4.5 yards per carry on this offense is ridiculous. Forte with 2 touchdowns, 241 yards, 4.2 yards per carry. And McGuire, I think he's shown a little bit. So I gave it to them. And this is really looking past the stats where I think they are finding holes and they are making some yards out of absolutely nothing this year. They've definitely been doing that. So I gave them a number 3. I think Forte has actually been playing better than people give him credit for because it's easy to kind of crap on the old guy. And we aren't even huge fans of Forte. But there's a lot of games where it would be like Forte, 20 rushes for 30, maybe not 20 rushes, 12 rushes for 24 yards. Pick, oh my God, Forte is terrible. I'm like, show me one lane that the offensive line opened for him that he did not hit, because he still does hit lanes. And we showed the one game where he's, like whatever it be, an outside zone, and he's setting up inside, like he's running through the A gap and then bounces back to the C gap where it was designed to go. But he's setting up the defense to go inside and he's bouncing back outside on purpose. Like he's still an okay running back at this point. So I give it to the Jets running backs. Honestly, there really wasn't too many studs on the offense. There wasn't a all-star cast of guys to pick from. So I gave it to the Jets running back group. Glenn, move on to your number 2. Who is it?
My number 2 is going to be Austin Seferian-Jenkins, tight end. Guy's having himself a really nice season. One of the better tight ends in the league in terms of receptions since coming back from his 2-game suspension. You have to love the way the guy's turned his life around. Well documented. He had his drinking issues. That's why he became available in the first place. Former second-round pick, I believe, who looked like he was headed, he was on his way to being a huge bust, and now he's on his way to a huge contract. So, congrats to him. And honestly, the only reason he's not my number 1 is too many damn holding calls. It feels like he's good for a hold, one. But it. Last couple of years, kind of, they say, couldn't block his way out of a wet paper bag. But this season, different guy, effort's there. And you hope that in time, the holding penalties go away as he tightens up his blocking technique. But the effort is there, the desire is there, and the production as a pass catcher is there. Just hope that at some point they start using him down the field a little bit more. I'm a bit of a broken record with that, but I really feel like he's a guy who can get down the field and create some mismatches.
Yeah, he's my number 2 as well, Glenn. There's a good play to find to just leave it on. But yeah, and honestly, he could be my number 1 too if the Jets moved or used him vertically down the field more, because we see him a lot in short passing situations, and yeah, he'll pick up a first down or make a third down more manageable, whatever it may be. But I think if we saw him more vertically, like we saw in this play, where they're using him vertically down the field, I think he can make these more type of plays over linebackers, because you see that he had a little bit of actually I think that's Telvin Smith, so he probably didn't have a speed advantage on him, so it's probably not the best example. But yeah, too fast for linebackers, too big for safeties type of thing. That applies to him definitely. Now there's people, I think, was it Fahey last week who said that he could be Kelsey if he had Alex Smith or something like that. I don't agree with that, because Kelsey is fantastic, but yeah.
Look, he could be an upper echelon at the very least. He could be an upper echelon tight end. Could he be an elite top 5? Who knows? But in the right offense, he's shown that he can be very effective. And I think that if the Jets don't get him locked up before free agency hits, they're going to find themselves in a pretty ugly bidding war.
Yeah, I agree with that. Where he could probably be a top 10 somewhere around there, but best in the league probably not. But okay, regardless, yeah, he's my number 2. You only see 39 receptions, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 39 receptions through 10 games for a tight end for us, Glenn, is like that's the best we've seen in years, years and years and years. What was the one year I think we literally had 11 receptions, 11 receptions or something like that. It could have been Glenn.
A couple of years ago, man. I think they had 4. I really do.
Go back and see one of your. Try to find that, Clay.
No, I don't want to. No, I moved on.
I think it was 11. You could be wrong. I don't know. Somewhere right around there, even at 4 or 11.
It felt like 4.
Yeah. This is preseason. I'm moving on to preseason. I'm gonna back out of this, but Yeah, so he gets my number 2. Your number 1, Glenn. Who is it?
Robbie Anderson, man. Hey, touchdown reception in 4 straight games, 5 on the year. The way he's playing, this dude might see double-digit touchdowns. And let's face it, the quarterback play has been better this year, but with even better quarterback play, he'd probably have 8 or 9 touchdowns already. The guy just gets open, he beats people, and he's a playmaker. You know, we've talked about his route tree is expanding. He's far from polished, but all you have to do just do, you know, if all you're doing is beating people deep and people are anticipating it, just add one little wrinkle. If you can run a little skinny post or something over the middle and just give him something else to think about. You know, it's like if Mariano Rivera added a changeup, like he'll beat the hell out of you with that cutter.
No, had to make the Yankees reference.
Hey, listen, you know, it's a fair point though. I mean, you know, you gotta give me credit. Yeah, if you you know, add a changeup or something, and that's what he's doing. So his game is evolving, and he's proven himself to be a damn good receiver. So he gets my number 1.
Yeah, he gets my number 1 as well, Glenn. 35 receptions, 568 yards, 5 touchdowns. This game, it could have actually been 2 touchdowns. I think it's actually the play up from this one. Yeah, where he actually beats Grimes here, but the ball is, you know, like I said, it's not thrown.
Too much air under it.
Yeah, too much air under it, too far back. If that was thrown more on a line drive, he would probably had a touchdown right here. So you'll see him, you know, McCown miss a couple of balls to him deep, not as much as Fitzpatrick did last year. That's for damn sure. No. But so there's people like, oh, well, he should have another, you know, 300 yards and 10 more touchdowns. Like, while I do agree he should have more receiving yards, more touchdowns, he's not Calvin Johnson. So let's not, you know, think he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. He's a really good deep threat. He still severely has to improve on his underneath route running. Regardless if he gets open, people will probably show me a play. Oh, well, he gets open on this play. It's because a cornerback is turning around and backpedaling and then sprinting or flipping his hip and sprinting 10 yards too early because Robbie Anderson's fast. But in terms of the actual creating separation just purely based on that actual route and how crisp it's run, he definitely needs to improve his hand strength, that type of stuff. But yeah, he gets my number. He gets my number 1 too, and he's definitely been the most explosive part of this offense, at least, you know, in my opinion, and then obviously in your opinion as well. So let's move on to the defense. Glenn, give me your number 3 dud on defense.
Number 3 dud on defense. Let's see, where are we? I'm gonna go with number 3. Hate to pick on him, and he hasn't played as much as I'd hoped, but you know I'm a big fan. We've both praised him. But Juston Burris has been a big disappointment. Really hoped he would break out and you know, grab that number 2 job this year and hang on to it. Just hasn't happened. Still optimistic. You know, he's still a young guy. Mid-round pick, 4th, 5th rounder. So there's still time for him to grow, but he's been a bit of a disappointment. Played a little bit better of late, to be honest. When he's been thrown out there, his tackling has been poor, which is a surprise. Again, as I mentioned earlier with James Carpenter, he's not quite as established as James Carpenter. But when you look at what he did in college and when you look at what he did last year, he looked like he was going to be a corner who was physical enough that there weren't going to be any problems with his tackling. Definitely something he didn't shy away from. He hit more like a safety. But this year, it seems like whenever he misses a tackle, the Jets have really paid for it. He's been a big part of, you know, 2 or 3 huge runs from opposing running backs.
Yeah, there's so many different plays I could show you of him just whiffing on tackles, Glenn. And he's my number 2 as well. Or sorry, my number 3 as well. A guy who's just been extremely disappointing. The only reason he's not a little bit higher is because of the fact that he's a 4th round draft pick. So if you're really expecting him to come in and, you know, he missed his tackle right here too. But if you're expecting him to come in and beat Darrelle Revis or a number 1 or a number 2 and really play well, then you were, you know, obviously mistaken. But at the same time, I did not expect him to play as poorly as he has, both in tackling, which I think has shown up more than in the past game. But, you know, like I said, running game has shown up more. But still, he's been playing bad in both, in my opinion. It's a little bit like kind of not the best quality. I don't know why. I guess it's because we're running the show. I have you on video and me on video and the mic in and all this stuff. So it's a little bit poor quality and actually is on Twitter, but it is what it is. Until I get that.
Headphones are acting up too. I feel like my headphones aren't fitting right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm only getting like a little bit of scratch from you, Glenn. I don't know if it's like your mic and your thing, but when you move around sometimes we get some scratchiness from you. But like I said, we're gonna have some technical difficulties through, you know, the first couple of weeks here. We'll fix it all. We'll figure it out. Maybe I'm gonna get Phil to send us all new equipment. I want a new computer. I want a new mic. I want a new backdrop. I want Glenn to have a whole entire new room, even though I do like it.
I need Phil to rent me out Abbey Road Studios in London.
Yeah.
I'll do JetNation Radio from Abbey Road.
Yeah. No. So we'll see, but it will improve. So the static, kind of sound, some of the lag in the video, I promise to everybody that we will fix it eventually. It's just it takes a little bit to figure out how to do all that stuff. I'm not a very tech savvy guy. I'm just not. But yeah, he gets my number 3 as well, Glenn. Number 2 is Buster Skrine. Maybe I should have moved him to 3 and Burris to 2. But Buster Skrine's been terrible this year. Even though I kind of expected him to be terrible this year, at the same time, he just been flat out awful. For the contract that we signed him to, which was it wasn't too expensive, but still it was a good chunk of change. Relative to that contract, he's been very bad. So he gets my number 2.
Yeah, my number 2, and putting it in context because he really has obviously turned things around. But Mo Wilkerson, man, we're talking about all 10 games. We're not talking about how has he played the last couple weeks. And for the first 6-7 weeks of the season, the guy was completely invisible. We talked about it at length. I know I posted some clips. You posted some clips. Kyle Smith posted some clips of Brian Baldinger posted some clips of Mo Wilk just getting beaten up, badly abused, in the run game, in the pass game, just completely ineffective for 6-7 weeks. So while it's refreshing to see him that he's picked things up, you can't just discount the first 6 games because the last few have been good.
Yeah.
And for $18 million.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with you. I'm going to find some plays here, Glenn, because he was I have one. Hold on, let me just pull this up because some of the stuff he was doing was just beyond bad in the beginning of the season. Like you said, players are going to take off plays, but at the same time, this was the game where he took off like almost half the game. Like maybe not half the game, but there was at least like 12 to 15 plays where he just was not trying at all. And right here, you see him just double team coming and what are you doing? So we saw this many times this game. I could probably scroll down and find even more of him. Yeah, I said Wilkerson's effort. Yeah. Really driving his feet. So we saw that a lot this year, and he's my number 1, Glenn. 30 tackles, 2 sacks. It's not like, listen, if he was ledger usable from a couple of years ago and he was a backup and he was getting those type of stats, or he was playing, only 50-60% of snaps, yeah, that would be, okay. But for a guy who's making $17-18 million, guy who's going to be one of the highest, if not, I think it's like a top 5 highest non-paid quarterback, non-paid quarterback. No, that's not the right way to say it.
Top 5 paid non-quarterback.
Yeah, paid non-quarterback. There you go, Glenn. Next year, I'm not giving him the money. Regardless if he balls out the next 6 games, I'm not paying him. Or it's not my money, but Woody Johnson shouldn't pay him because he's just been beyond bad this year at times. And there's a couple of games where, the Dolphins game, or this is another player you see him right there where he's just not driving his feet at all. But regardless, like I said, there's a couple of games where he's playing well, but for the money he's making, no freaking way. So he gets my number 1, Glenn. Who is your number 1?
My number 1 is Buster Skrine, man. He's been atrocious. He's another guy who came here from Cleveland, and I've talked about talked about this before, how he looked all right on film, from what I watched after the Jets traded for him, after they signed him. His PFF grades were low, but not like, oh my God, why is this guy in the NFL low? But that's kind of what we've seen from him a lot this year. He had a couple nice games at one point, but as we've talked about, consistency, a lot of guys have a couple nice games. Mark Sanchez had a couple nice games. A lot of bad players have a couple nice games. And, another one. Look, I've said it before. I love the high character guys. I feel like Buster Skrine is a high character guy, so I hate to knock him. But, you can't sugarcoat it. He hasn't played well.
Yeah.
The penalties are ridiculous.
Yeah, I just gave Wilkerson mine just because, like I said, based on expectations, contract.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Skrine, we pretty much expected him to be dog shit because he is dog shit. So it is what it is. But let's move on to the studs, Glenn. Who is your number 3 stud of the defense?
The last second edition, Coney Ely, the guy's been a monster. You gotta love what we've seen from him. 9 deflected passes or passes defended, a bunch of pressures. Unfortunately, has come up just short on a couple of sack opportunities. He could easily have 5-6 sacks, but lump him in that boat with Austin Seferian Jenkins as another team's cast off who the Jets should be working on trying to sign to a long-term deal.
Yeah, and it was hard. It was hard to really figure out how to do this list because there's actually
there's been some good. This was the toughest list for me because there are some guys that I wanted to include, but Claiborne's not on my list, but he's been a good player. He's covering the other team's best receiver. He hasn't been, he's not been Darrelle Revis, but we haven't seen him get beat a whole lot. He's been beat on plays where receivers weren't targeted. But, as I've said before, if you pick through every cornerback's, watch film on every cornerback in the NFL, you're going to see guys get beat. It happens. But he's done a nice job. So this is probably the best group. I wanted to include Demario Davis. I didn't, but he's like the next guy down. So some good players on defense this year.
Yeah, and there's a couple honorable mentions for me, Deron Lee gets an honorable mention, and Ely gets an honorable mention, and Adams gets an honorable mention. But my number 3 is actually this guy, Glenn, Steve McClendon, 30 tackles, only a half sack, so it doesn't look like he's blowing up the stat sheet. But we've talked about him almost every single week having a really good game, and this is another game. We went over this play last game. Yeah, I believe we went over this play, but just super impressive dude, flashing his helmet into a gap to make the running back cut back, and then he's in that gap that he's cutting back to. Just really impressive stuff that he's doing this season. So he actually gets my number 3 here, Glenn.
Yeah, you and I think since last year have talked about him quite a bit, and we try to make a point to help Jets fans realize that he's a much better player than you think, because fans get so enamored with sacks, especially when you're talking about guys in the front 7. If people don't see double-digit sacks, they think you're a jag, they think you suck. But he does well, considering the fact he's he's not a big name. He does get rotated in and out quite a bit. So, he's an excellent choice there. I can't blame you. For me, number 2, a guy who doesn't get enough credit because he wasn't the first-round pick, but Marcus Maye. That second-round pick, he's created some turnovers. He's got a couple interceptions. You don't see teams we're not seeing the big plays from opposing offenses that we saw last year, and he's a big reason for that. He's a big hitter. He covers well. There's really not a lot they've asked him to do that he hasn't done well. And for a Jets second-round pick, you can put him on the Mount Rushmore of Jets second-round picks at this point, because they've been garbage for a long time. So hats off to him, and, exciting things for him in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's actually my number 1, Glenn. My number 2 was the guy you just talked about before, Demario Davis, 82 tackles, 3.5 sacks. He's been playing really impressive too. We're, like I said, a lot to show relative to expectations. We looked at him and Calvin Pryor. Okay, that's a wash. They're both really bad players. He's going to be a below average starter. He's just not a good player at all. And he's come in and he's actually been a solid linebacker this year. I'm not going to say he's Luke Kuechly or anything. He still has his struggles in coverage, but at the same time, he's been very, very reliable in the run game, and he's been playing very well. So he actually gets my number 2, because, like I said, I thought he was going to be terrible. Now this is a guy, I think he's 28 years old, Glenn, something right around there. This is a guy now that I'm thinking about, okay, well, yeah, he might be a veteran or, inching up to being a little bit of an older player, but he's a guy who you probably want to re-sign, or at least should start looking into re-signing, because he's a leader on this team and he's been playing pretty well. Obviously, if there's a guy like Luke Kuechly or one of those really good players in free agency who you want to replace him with, then yeah, that's fine. Get rid of him. But at this time, he's been a very good option and a very solid guy in the middle of the defense right there.
Yeah, hard to argue with. Like I said, I was tempted to put him in my top 3, and you could have. You could easily put him over either of the guys I chose. The guy I'm going with number 1 is not so much from a stat standpoint, but just the overall impact. And I'm going with Jamal Adams, man. If you look at where they're using this guy, they're legit. Like, sometimes you see a guy and you'll hear people say, "Oh, this guy plays a little bit of linebacker and he can play corner and he can play safety." And you look at the numbers and, like, the guy played, like, 4 reps at linebacker, 2 reps at corner, and 650 at safety. Like, it sounds nice to say, but in reality, the guy's not doing that. Not the case with Jamal Adams, man. This guy's playing, like, 30% of his reps at linebacker, 15-20% of his reps at corner. They're using him in the box, using him outside the box, and coverage against the run. When I was trying to decide where to put him on this list, or if I was going to put him on this list, big stat that I saw from Pro Football Focus. And again, this is one of those. It's not an objective thing. It's looking at what he's actually doing on the field. Their run stops, which I believe are any tackle made within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage, either beyond or behind the line of scrimmage. Excuse me. And I think Jamal Adams has 11 this year, which is more than any rookie safety since they started tracking that stat. So he's making a lot of plays. He's stopping runs. He's getting tackles behind the line, and he's just going to keep getting better. And I really think that, we've talked for a long time, Joe, and normally when you say that, you're talking about a pass rusher, but it's been a long time since the Jets had a player on defense that opposing offenses had the game plan for and say, how are we going to approach this guy? And I think Jamal Adams is that guy. Is that, what do you tell your offense? When he's lined up at linebacker, it's this. When he lines up at safety, they like to do that. And when he's over the tight end, this is what they do. He gives the Jets so many options. There's that great backside pursuit there against Tampa Bay. He does a lot of things so well, and I think that we finally have a guy that other teams have to game plan for.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're not watching on YouTube, me and Glenn aren't going over as many specific plays. We're talking about where this guy's lining up, the technique, the gap, all that stuff. We're kind of just, talking about Adams. I'm trying to put up plays of Adams, and like Glenn just referenced, him coming backside on this play, backside pursuit. So if you're not watching on YouTube, you should. You just go to YouTube, you type in, the search bar JetNation, and it says, JetNation, like logo will pop up. Subscribe to JetNation. Don't just watch the videos. You have to subscribe, or you don't have to, but you should. And then, just go under videos. It'll sort out newest to oldest, and we should be up there. Just, if not, you have to scroll down a little bit. It's really not that hard to do. So don't kind of not give yourself the opportunity to watch the videos that we're talking about. But yeah, he's been super impressive, Glenn. And if anything with Adams, I think he's been honest. If I had to label him, like not label him, but say what he's been the most, it's like a weak side linebacker. He's been playing even more than safety. I see him around the line of scrimmage and playing, whether it be a force player to force a run back inside, or a contained player on the edge, or a blitzer, or whatever it may be. I see him around the line of scrimmage more than I see him in coverage. And I think that's where we've seen Adams struggle more, is in coverage. We kind of tries to get too physical with tight ends or whoever, usually tight ends actually, in their route stem or at the top of their routes, and then he kind of gets beat by the tight end. But overall, like you said, and we've said many times, a guy who is playing, weak side linebacker, as a force player, as a blitzer, as a, not a single high safety, but, as a high safety, because, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be Marcus Maye who's playing single high, but a deep safety, I should say, whatever it may be, he's doing everything. And for a young guy to have to learn all those positions and learn, how to read and react to certain plays at a certain position, it's super impressive. But I kind of expected a lot from him, so that's why he wasn't in there. But obviously, it's understandable that this guy is your number one, because this guy, even though Marcus Maye is my number one, who we talked about before, because relative to expectations, I didn't think he was going to be great this year. Coming off of his campaign at Florida, where I think he gave up like 5 touchdowns over his head last year. I was like, oh crap, NFL, they're going to confuse him more. He's going to give up some touchdowns. There really hasn't been times where you've seen him get beat a ton. And there's been some plays where I forget what team. I think it was versus the Falcons. Maybe it was the Falcons. But there's a couple of times where you see him like leave his middle third deep zone of the field, and the quarterback won't see it or whatever. There's some times where you could chalk it up. Okay, well, if the quarterback looked there, he would have gotten beat, etc. But overall, I think he's been the better safety. With saying that, I think Adams is going to be the better safety going forward, where I think he's going to be the better overall player. The guy who's going to make more impact, do more things, be more versatile, that type of thing. But overall, right now, I think Maye is my number one. He's been really damn impressive. So, moving on, Glenn.
I agree. No, I was torn between him and Adams, and the reason I went with Adams was because of the versatility with Adams and how many different roles he's been asked to play. But in terms of just doing their job well and producing, you'd have to go with Marcus Maye. But again, Adams' versatility and is, keeping other teams guessing is what made me give him the nod.
Yeah, like this play, you could see him. Like he played deep, come up and fill in the run game. Really great, pursuit, and range too. He has some good bursts. Where you see some times where there's got like runners going to the sideline. Like, oh my God, he's even able to get there in time, and he's pretty fast, dude. So yeah, Maye is my number one. But either one, I think we should put like the two safeties as the number one studs of the defense, because they've just been really damn impressive. So, but moving on, Glenn. Let's go to, I guess, like, this is kind of like the same type of thing, but give me a couple players who have been, I guess it could be different, it kind of can at the same time, because we've talked about most of it, but your biggest disappointments of the years. Give me a couple of them, even though it's probably the same.
Yeah, I mean, disappointments, are Carpenter and Winters. Another guy, and I wouldn't even say a disappointment, but one guy who I was kind of hoping for bigger things, but, more wishful thinking. He's not a proven guy, and I still think he can be a good player. He hasn't been bad. Josh Martin, I was hoping his speed off the edge would result in a couple more sacks, but we haven't seen that from him. But that's not to say he won't. He's been in the league a few years, but he doesn't have a ton of playing time under his belt outside of special teams. So I'm still hopeful for him, and I'm not saying he sucks. I'm not saying cut him. I'm not saying release him. I'm just saying that looking at what he brought in terms of just his physical skill set, and knowing he was going to get the reps, I thought I kind of pegged him for surprising people, picking up 7 or 8 sacks this year. That looks pretty unlikely at this point. I think he's only got 1.5. He's had a couple plays where he got through to the quarterback, and quarterback was able to duck under him and evade the sack. So he's gotten some pressure. He's held up against the run better than I expected. So that's been a plus. But not for the most part, getting kind of what you expected out of guys. I'm not going to say I'm disappointed in our Darius Stewart, because he just hasn't gotten the reps. And I don't know that that's him or if that's Todd Bowles. I think from what little we've seen of him, I think he can play. So it's not I don't look at the guy and say, oh, man, I thought this guy was going to be pretty good, and he's not. No, I thought he was going to be pretty good, and I still think he's going to be pretty good. He's just not getting the opportunity. So not really disappointed. This team is kind of around where I thought, I think when we did our prediction show, I said 2 to 4 wins. They may end up winning 5. They may steal 1 or 2 more. But for the most part, not a great deal, different than what I expected coming into the year.
Yeah, I just in terms of like players, I think, we talked about most of them: Wilkerson, Burris, Carpenter, Winters. I agree with you. The fact that we haven't seen our Darius Stewart or Hansen as much is a little bit of a disappointment, but there's really not too much that we haven't talked about, Glenn, throughout the show. So, like I said, Burris, Carpenter, Winters. But okay, moving on to the biggest surprises, Glenn. Any guys who kind of we didn't talk about who are a surprise? Obviously we talked about Maye and Adams, how well they're playing already. I think guy like Davis is a big surprise this year, who was my number 2 stud of the defense. You have guys like Lee, you have guys like Ely, Austin Seferian-Jenkins. So there's a big list of actual surprises for this team.
Yeah, there are. Even Demario Davis, you mentioned him. Even though earlier during the preseason, I sent out a tweet. I went and watched a few clips of him with the Browns last year. Playing a different role. Playing David Harris's old role instead of playing his old role with the Jets. And I saw that I thought he looked like a better player, and I shot out a tweet of him making a sideline to sideline play, a tackle around the line of scrimmage, and I just kind of said, like, in a new role in this defense, we could see an improved Demario Davis. I didn't think he would be this improved. He's been very good. So really a pleasant surprise there. Morris Claiborne he's dinged up right now, but it's not a major injury from what we know. So he's probably already played more games than I thought he might. That's been a nice surprise. I've seen people calling, saying that they hope the Jets re-sign him. I'm not quite at that point yet. For the right money, I guess, yeah. But for a guy who's been as injured as he has, not somebody I'd want to see them give a big contract to. Yeah. But that's pretty much it. Those are the 2 that jump out for me.
Now, Glenn, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, because I don't know if we've talked about this before or we came on or whatever, but in your opinion, since we are doing like a mid-season type review, 10 games, what is the worst play that you can think of the entire year? Is there any play that really
Oh,
stands
God.
out to you that was just absolutely terrible?
Any one single play. I mean, God, I think I try to forget that stuff on purpose. God, I hate to say play. That's not even play. That's more of a call. I'm thinking of the non-touchdown for Austin Seferian-Jenkins against New England. But maybe the Josh McCown interception that he threw late in the game, when they had a chance to win to pull out another win, and he threw that huge pick. That was disappointing.
Yeah, is this the player I'm talking about, Glenn?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is the worst play of the year. There's a couple big runs and stuff like that we kind of highlighted through the year that we talked about, but I think this was, like I said, the worst. When you just see, where is it? I think it's Bobby McCain come out here and just a curl to flat zone, and he just sitting underneath in a coverage. And I understand that McCown, I think somebody actually got pushed into the pocket where he couldn't fully step into the throw. I think it was Carpenter it was Beacham, so he couldn't step into the throw. But at the same time, when you if you kind of I guess if I can grab it here, if you can freeze frame where, when he was going to throw the ball, he's going to throw the ball here, you have to make a perfect throw to get that over his head. On that, out route from Curse there. So I think that was the worst play, especially, and I hate when people, and a lot of people did this after this play, where they're like, how could Morton do this? This was such a terrible play call. Why would the Jets go for it there? And why wouldn't they just play for overtime? Well, they didn't play for overtime because they just gave up, 14 or 17 points in the fourth quarter. They couldn't move the ball for crap. So they're going to try to, be careful here and get out of bounds. And they had enough faith in Josh McCown where, okay, you're a veteran quarterback. Just don't shit the bed and throw an interception here and give the Dolphins a game-winning field goal. Obviously, that's what he ended up doing. So they had enough faith in him where he can make the right read, and he wasn't going to throw an interception. Obviously, he did that, so that's not a great sign for them. But, if you could get a couple of chunk plays and kick a field goal and not have to go into overtime where the Dolphins were probably going to beat you because he couldn't move the ball and they were scoring on every possession they had. So I understand the Jets' decision to go for it there, so I hated people who were questioning that. But at the same time, how are you going to throw that ball, McCown? So that was the worst play of the year, Glenn. Now, is there a best play of the year that you could remember? This one was a little bit more difficult to think of best plays, but is there anything that stands out in your mind?
Best play in terms of it, the distance and the fact that it was a score and the awareness was the Bilal Powell big touchdown run against Jacksonville. I don't think anybody in the building thought that he didn't get touched on his way, on that run to the right where he, leaped over a defender and there was another defender right in the area. Everybody thought he was down, and good job by him and the officials. No whistle. And he just got up and took off, and what was a 70-some yard touchdown run, 80-some yard touchdown run. So yeah, in terms of the fact that it was a score, it was against a quality defense. It showed just great awareness on his part.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with a different one, Glenn. This is actually I kind of have two, I guess, but this one from Ely, the deflected pass.
Yep.
And the touchdown, or not the touchdown, the almost touchdown here, just had to get tackled by Bortles. But, just he's been doing this all year where he gets into the throwing lanes as soon as the quarterback takes a non-throwing hand off the ball. He jumps up and he deflects the ball. So he's been doing that a lot too. And I think actually the best play, just in terms of how much talent it took, was the curly catch right here against the Patriots. Just great body control.
Yeah, this was a great catch.
Yeah, great body control. Strong hands to go up and grab it with a cornerback draped all over him. High points it, twists around, controls the ball to the ground, almost touchdown. So I think this is actually probably the best play of the year here. But just something I want to throw in. Okay, what are some of the best plays, and maybe have some Jets fans think about some plays and maybe make them happy, since the Jets are. We just had to wait we have to wait 2 weeks before the Jets play a game since the end of the Bucs game. So, think about some positive Jets football, because we, it comes sparingly at times. It definitely does. It's some losing streaks and some, even the wins, like the Browns game. That was just one of the most terrible games I've ever seen in my entire life. But Glenn, I guess let's move on from the plays and all this stuff, but let's move on to what we were going to talk about, what kind of Rich talked about. But, Jets have the hardest schedule remaining in the NFL. Next week We have the home game versus the 7-3 Panthers. Then we're home versus the 6-4 Chiefs with now Darrelle Revis on their team. And then we go to to Denver to play the Broncos, who are 3-7, who, they're not a great team, but they still have a really good defense, and the Jets are not a good road team. Next week we go on the road again, 8-2 Saints, which I will be at. And then the Chargers at home, the 4-6 Chargers, and then away at the 8-2 Patriots. So, realistic view of the rest of the season, how do you see the Jets finishing? Maybe 1-5, 2-4. What are you expecting?
I'm expecting that type, 1-5, maybe a 2-4 if New England goes with their backups late. But you can never the biggest factor right now for the Jets, if they want to start winning some football games, is, at least in my opinion, is the health of Leonard Williams. And if you look at the way Leonard Williams has played over the last few weeks compared to the first 6, 7, 8 weeks, he's been a different guy. I think I saw that he was rated like the second-rated D lineman by PFF over the last 3 weeks, whereas he was like in the 60s or 70s or 80s leading up to that point. And I think the wrist was affecting how well he could use his hands. So anytime you play a team with multiple dominant players on the D line, which, let's face it, Mo Wilk, as I said earlier, he's started the year terrible. He's looked like a different guy. Leo looks like he's finally healthy. And as the guy we mentioned earlier, McClendon up the middle. If this D-line starts playing to their full potential, they're going to harass quarterbacks, and harassed quarterbacks do tend to turn the ball over. So if they play at their best and they force a couple fumbles or a couple early throws, some picks, they'll stay in some games. They might steal a few, far more than we expect. This Carolina Panthers team, not a lot of great receiving threats, not a lot of good receiving threats. So if you can contain Cam and keep him under pressure, best case scenario, they could surprise some people and win 4 more games, but I don't see it happening. I think we see 2 more wins. And
what are those games, Glenn? Are there any specific games that you think that you're looking for the Jets to win?
Well, I think they'll win Week 17. I'm assuming the Pats will be resting their starters, and the Jets won't. And where they win, I could see this week being a win at home, coming off the bye, well rested, everybody's healthy. Carolina is good but not great. I could see that being a win this week. I'm not saying they will. I'm not picking them, but it's far beyond. I think it's foolish to say it's not a winnable game. So specifically where they'll come from, no. But because honestly, I look at their schedule, I don't see a lot of teams I think they should beat, but I think they'll steal another win or two.
Yeah, and I agree. And for whatever reason, right now I'm frozen in my screen. I don't know if I'm frozen to you, but
yeah, you're frozen.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the way I like to be. So hopefully, that will kick back up. But regardless, right now I'm frozen. So did I at least look good during that shot? Yeah, it's okay. I've done better. I've done worse. But home against the Panthers. We'll obviously talk about that game in a little bit. Well, I guess we can get into that game a little bit more than we usually do. But yeah, Panthers is going to be tough just because of how tough their defense is. The Chiefs, we'll see. Maybe the Chiefs is a win because they've been really reeling in the last couple of weeks. I think they started 5-0, Glenn, and now they're, I guess, 1-4 in their last 5 games or something right around there.
Yeah.
The Broncos on the road now, they have a really good defense, obviously, but they're starting Paxton Lynch now, who they clearly don't have a lot of faith in. If they don't start him, they're going to have Simeon. If they don't start Simeon, they're going to have Osweiler. So they don't have a good quarterback. They don't have a good offense. That's a game if they show up on the road, they can win that game. Saints, I really don't see them having a shot. Chargers at home, yeah, I think so too. So I think their best shots really are probably the Broncos on the road and the Chargers. So I see the Jets probably getting 1 or 2 more wins. It's hard to bank on either one of them because if the Jets keep playing the way they are on the road, they're only getting 1 more win because you're not going to beat the Broncos on the road if you can't, live up to, I guess, kind of how you play at home because the Broncos defense will just suffocate you. So we'll see. Maybe the Chargers at home is probably the best chance. But, yeah, one game, I think they definitely win, maybe 2. But moving on, Glenn, I guess while I try to figure out why I'm frozen, maybe the recording will come out and we won't be frozen or maybe I won't be frozen. But you never know. The recording comes out like last week. I didn't hear the scratchiness, and then I heard it after. But now I'm hearing a little bit more. Like I said, we'll try to fix it. But just in general, Glenn, what do you like? I guess through 10 weeks of this season, what do you think this team is? You know, who is this team? Just in general, I guess it's kind of a very bland type of question, but.
Well, I mean, listen, they're a team that I think Jets fans, if you can get over the negativity and get over the fact that it'll be another postseason free year where they won't be going to the playoffs, if you just look at it for what it is and look at it, we all talked about how we wanted this season to be about young guys developing and just up and down the roster, really. We mentioned Maye and Adams. Jordan Jenkins has played well. Darren Lee has really come on. We mentioned how Claiborne has played fairly well, and he's not exactly, he's not a guy who's been around forever. Could be a guy that, as I said, I don't want him to a long-term deal if it's big money, but he's a guy who's played well. We're seeing Leo getting back to his old self and playing like the Leo that he had been leading up to this year. Just a lot of young guys. Elijah McGuire. We've talked about how well he's played, especially, his numbers would clearly be much better if the offensive line play was better. Brandon Shell's been hit and miss. He's at his good moments, he's at his bad moments, but I think all in all, as a future starter, I think he's got a chance in this league. So there are a lot of young players, a lot of young pieces to build around moving forward. And let's face it, we say it all the time. Everybody says this league is all about the quarterback-driven league. And just think where this team might be if they had an upper echelon quarterback. They'd be in the thick of the playoff hunt. They had 3 late leads in the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? This team is a good quarterback away from being, 7-3, or somewhere along those lines. And these young kids, as we said, Stewart and Hansen haven't been getting a lot of reps. But in their limited reps, when they've been targeted, they've looked all right, especially Stewart, as physical as he is. Robbie Anderson just beating guys. Everyone said last year that, undrafted, caught guys off guard, nobody knew what to expect. This year will be different. Yep. He's still running right past people. How many games does he have to play before we say, okay, he's good at running past people? That's what he does. You like having those guys on your roster. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, another young guy. He's only been in the league a few years. And I'm assuming the Jets will get him done and re-signed at some point. So it's not dire. It's no fun being 4-6, but it's a lot worse when you're 4-6 and you're doing it on the backs of a bunch of veterans who are on their way out the door and you don't have any young guys to replace them. And honestly, the middle of that defense, I'll tell you what, man, if Darren Lee keeps coming along the way, patrolling, the center position or safety positions in the center of that defense, they special here. They really can, or at least the foundation to start building and become an elite unit.
Glenn, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, yeah, just having some audio troubles on my computer. A bunch of error messages popped on my computer about my microphone. So I was like, this sucks. But yeah, it's a young, hungry team. Obviously, they have to develop in some key areas like closing out a game or starting a game or playing on the road, where the road they have been absolutely terrible. Or even the Browns win. I don't know what is a record 1-4 on the road, 1-5 on the road, Glenn. And the one game that they won was against the Browns, that was one of the worst football games I've ever seen in my entire life. So they have to learn how to play on the road. They got to learn how to close out. But this is exactly how many times before the season, Glenn, did we talk about? Well, there's a difference between a young, hungry team being 5-11 and an old, veteran, overpaid team being 5-11. This is exactly what we wanted. Now, do we want the Jets to lose to the Bucs or lose the lead to the Dolphins or whatever it may be? No, not necessarily. But obviously, we understand there's a lack of talent in certain key areas, and they still have a lot of cap room and draft picks this year to address those things. There's not a really a roster that has a ton of talent on it right now. But we're seeing them fight. We're seeing them scrap. We're seeing them have fun. We're not seeing locker room problems. We're seeing them compete in every single game, other than the Raiders game where they were even competing in the first half, and then obviously a muffed punt from I forget what punt return that was. We've had a couple different ones this year, Glenn. Whatever the hell his name was, but muff punt that kind of went downhill from there.
Was that Khalif Raymond?
That's what I thought too, but it could have been, it could have not been. I forget exactly who it was. We've had a couple, but overall they've been very competitive this year. Like I said, in every single game, and that's something that we didn't see last year. How many games were they blown out in Glenn last year? Can you think of off the top of your head?
I mean, at least 4 or 5, where you just by halftime you knew the game was over. And it was just so ugly. The Colts blew them out. The Dolphins blew them out. The Raiders blew them out. Just everybody just beat them up and down the field last year. And like we've said, there's young, hungry 5-11, and there's washed up on their way out the door 5-11. And young, hungry 5-11 looks a lot better for the future. So a lot of people get on Mike McCagnon, and I don't want to go on at length about this again, but for some reason, GMs around the NFL swing and miss on 7, 8, 9 quarterbacks, and they still hang around. Mike McCagnon's missed on 2, and everybody's saying, "Well, can't trust this guy to pick a quarterback. Can't get we're gonna have a top pick. We got to get rid of him and let someone else pick this new QB for us." Like as if there are GMs out there who just hit on QBs every year. I've discussed it at length. The Ozzie Newsome thing. Joe Flacco was like the 9th or 10th quarterback he took, and he's arguably the best GM in the NFL. So, some people get an agenda, they stick to it. Nothing a GM or a coach does is good enough because they just want to be right. Well, I said this guy was going to suck, and I want to be right. So, even though he's building a quality young roster, he's had 2 entire opportunities to pick a quarterback and didn't. Now, if you want to knock him for not taking Deshaun Watson, I can't really fault you for that. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't in love with Watson. I was kind of, like, if you take him, I'll live with it. If you don't, I'm fine with it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good young talent on this roster that if you just open your eyes and shut your mouth and take some time to watch, you'll realize. You probably won't admit it because you're a douche, but deep down inside, you'll know there's some good talent on this roster, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, and Glenn, I don't know what you consider a blowout. Maybe like 2 touchdowns, I would say, or so. But last year, Chiefs 24-3 beat the Jets. The Seahawks only beat us by 10, but that really weren't that close in that game. Steelers 31-13. Cardinals 28-3. I had the luxury of actually flying to Arizona to see that game, which was absolutely terrible. The Colts beat us 41-10 at our at home. The Dolphins beat us 30.
That disaster.
Yeah, the Dolphins beat us 34-13. The next week after that, the Patriots beat us 41-3. Like it was just absolutely terrible.
It's weird. I'd forgotten it was that bad. I remember the late season ones. I forgot about the early season blowouts. I think because the late season ones, you just kind of felt like the team had given up. And they were down so big so quick. It was like, go buy a hot dog, you come back, they're down 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, Glenn, and look, 21 points differential, 21-point differential, 18-point differential, 31-point differential. What is the 21-point differential? This is 38-point differential. So yeah, 5-6 games that they were just absolutely just blown out. Glenn, let's move on to the next topic. I guess just really quick, like the state of the union type thing. Where do you think at this point in time, both McCagnon and Bowles, where do they stand?
Well, I mean, without going on too long, because it does tie into what I just said. I think they're both safe as long if they keep playing this way. I think McCagnon is safe regardless. I think he's put enough pieces in place. I want the big question to me is O-line coach Steve Marshall. Is he going to be in hot water based on the fact that this offensive line has struggled so much? Because really, tired of saying it, but they are, to me, the biggest reason for this team's failures. So are they going to look at him and say, you had 2 guards who we've seen play at a high level, and they basically fell apart under your tutelage. So who takes the fall for that, remains to be seen. But all in all, I think when you look at the big picture, I think McCagnon's brought in enough good young players, and Todd Bowles has done a nice enough job with this roster. I don't think either one of them goes, barring, if they go out there and we see no effort and they get smoked, you see a bunch of 27 and 34-point losses over the final few weeks of the season, then maybe Todd Bowles is in trouble. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think and I don't think he deserves to be let go. I'm not. I've made no big secret that I'm not the biggest Todd Bowles fan. I kind of soured on him when I saw. We've seen some losses where they played teams where Todd Bowles, as a defensive genius, had an opponent that had one good player, and he couldn't come up with a way to stop one good player.
DeAndre Hopkins.
So, yeah, DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins. Teams that have one weapon and you can't shut down the one weapon. That kind of gets agitating. I don't care about the whole emotion thing. People are always not emotional enough.
I hate that.
Bill Belichick's not emotional enough. You know what I mean? Just put together a winning game plan. Emotions are just for show. Rex Ryan was the most emotional guy I've ever seen on a sideline. And it was nice. He won 4 playoff games. It was a good time. But all in all, how much did that emotion get him his last 3-4 years with the team? Nothing. Yeah. So,
Glenn, but Tom Coughlin was very, very emotional and showed a lot, and he won a couple of Super Bowl rings.
Yeah, and it was only because he was emotional. It had nothing to do with preparation and game plans. It was just I love that. I love when they say that. Like I remember like when John Gruden would be on the sideline, with his Chucky stare, which was funny enough. But broadcasters would try to tell us that this 320-pound D lineman who just beats the crap out of other 300-pound men for a living was going to be scared of John Gruden scowling at him as he came back to the sideline.
Yeah,
like, I'm sure he was terrified of John Gruden, who I like. I'm not knocking Gruden. I'm a big fan, but the thought of an NFL player being scared of being yelled at is just hilarious. But yeah, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, but Bulls, I think they're both safe.
Yeah.
I think they're safe. I think, but I've said it before, man, and the more I think about it, and I probably spend more time thinking about it than I should, take a quarterback with that first pick and honestly package those 2 second-rounders to get back up into the first round and take another one. That's or get one in free agency, then take a quarterback at 1, then use those 2s to move up and get yourself a left tackle or something along those lines, another difference maker.
Yeah, not there. Like McCagnon, I definitely think he's safe but I think people are kind of too hard on him. Where I'm not going to say, okay, he's the best GM in the entire league, and there were some things I think in his first year, like signing Revis, with that. If he was signed by the Jets, or if he was signed by, let's just say, a random team, the 49ers, as their GM, would he really try to sign Revis for that much money? I'm going to say no. Now, am I foolish for thinking that? Maybe, but that's just my belief that he was pushed into doing that. I think the Jets wanted to try to kind of win their first year, so that's a little bit of a black mark on his his resume type of deal. But at the same time, you have to look at even just like this year, Glenn, like bringing in Ely, great move. Bring in Austin Seferian-Jenkins last year, great move. Bringing in Demario Davis has turned out to be a great move. Trading up for Shell has been a pretty good move. You have to realize he's not a first-round right tackle. He's a guy who was picked in the in the 5th round. Robbie Anderson, some of the guys that he's finding in the later rounds and even in free agency have been pretty good. And even those contracts too, like even the Revis contract and some of the other ones aren't contracts that are absolutely like killing the Jets. Like right now, the Jets in their second year with Wilkerson, 2 years stuck with them. But at the same time, they're gonna be able to clear up $17 million next year if they cut him. So there's always an out that he's creating. So
the Sheldon deal.
Exactly. And he got a 2nd-round pick in Curse, who's a, number 3, number 4, even though I don't like to label, number 3, number 4, number 2, number 1. It's a, XZ slot, that type of thing is more accurate, but he's an okay receiver. But they got that and a 2nd-round pick where we were talking about in the offseason, okay, trade a 4th or a 5th for Sheldon. He got a 2nd and a decent wide receiver. So he's been making some good trades. He's been picking up some good free agents. Now, is there bad moves? Yeah, I'm not just going to, praise the guy. Okay, yeah, he's made really good moves. The Hackenberg is probably his biggest smudge on his resume type of deal.
Yep.
because Hackenberg hasn't even played and he's looked absolutely terrible. People will kill him for Devin Smith. Devin Smith is an injury thing. It's not like he was like D. Milner who had a whole bunch of injuries in college. Now, did he have some? Yeah, but you can't kill him for Devin Smith pick. We all like that pick. I'm going to say 90% of Jets fans liked that pick when they made it. So that's not a great move. Now, Malden, yeah, it's a bad pick right there. He's not really looking like he's going to shape up to be a starting outside linebacker type. But, look at the Patriots draft record. Look at the Ravens draft record. People have bad picks. So I think McCagnon overall has been okay to solid. So I don't think it's time for him to go. I think Bowles, the jury's still out on him. I think if I had to pick like now, if I could restart with a different head coach, or have different head coaching, kind of have them be in the same position where the players know that coach, they know his playbook and that stuff, and I can just replace them. Yeah, I want Bowles gone, but at the same time, I think he stays. I don't think you're just going to, flip up a young team on their head after their first year learning the playbook, et cetera. So I think he stays. I think overall this year, I would be biased if I didn't say that he's done a pretty good job this year.
Yeah, he absolutely has. I was hard on him early in the year, and in all honesty, part of it for me is that realization. Even during the process of searching for a coach when they hired Todd Bowles and when they were looking at Dan Quinn at the time. Going through the list, and I can't remember how in-depth we've gone on this, but if you look at the NFL in the last 30 years, as much as we talk about you have to have a franchise quarterback to win, and everyone always says, I don't want to retread head coach. Look at the last 30 years. How many coaches can you think of took over a team as a first-time head coach, took over a bad team, and went on to win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, not many at all.
I can't think of one. I cannot think of one in the last 20 years, 30 years. I can't think of a head coach who got his first job, took over a bad team, and won. It's always guys who had to fail first, get some time off to think about what mistakes they made, and come back and improve.
Yeah, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, all those guys.
Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, and even, you look at it like Bill Cowher. He won one, but it took him 17 years. You know what I mean?
And he's regarded as one of the best coaches of all time.
Yeah, it took him 17 years to win a ring. And, I think he deserves that recognition because he, if you remember, maybe it was overblown, but it always seemed like the Steelers every year felt like they were the big losers in free agency. Like every year they would lose huge names and they would still be competitive. But it still took the guy 17 years to win a ring. Is it John Izek's time?
I know not as a coach, but as a front office guy.
No.
He's a retread, Glenn.
It is no. We're talking about head coaches. We're not talking about general managers.
Okay.
He's absolutely atrocious. So yeah, once I realized that, I kind of the history of how unlikely, how infrequent it is for a team to win a Super Bowl with a first time head coach. I really didn't want a first timer. And as I was watching the Jets get blown out week after week after week last year, I kind of convinced myself that it was never going to happen with Bowles, and it may. But if it does, it'll be the first one in a very, 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 very long time.
Yeah, Glenn, the only coach that I could think of that you were talking about, I think Mike Tomlin come from anywhere as a head coach previously, or was
no, but he took over a team that just won a Super Bowl. He didn't take over a bad team. He took over a Super Bowl winning team.
Yeah, I was just trying to think about head coaches taking over teams in general who weren't retreads who won.
Yeah, there's a like Barry Switzer got one with Jimmy Johnson's team, and and of course Tomlin got one with Cowher's team.
Yeah, because I think he was like a D-backs coach or like a coordinator.
He was a first-time coach. He's the only first-timer I can think of in a long time. But of course, he walked into a Super Bowl winning roster with a Hall of Fame quarterback. Yeah, no, and obviously, and I think that he's not as good as a coach as everybody thinks he is. I think they get to the playoffs a lot, but they have a lot of talent on that team. Like look at their offense, for example. Like Le'Veon Bell, Brown, and Roethlisberger. Like he always has really good pieces on that team. Their defense, with Polamalu back in the day and Harrison and all these guys, like they're all really good. Actually, I don't know when Tomlin started coaching. He still had Polamalu on his team. He did, yeah. Yeah. So, but regardless, let's move on from that. Let's get into some other, little topics before we get into some of the games and stuff like that. Kind of what Rich asked before. I don't want to spend too long on it, but where do the young quarterbacks stand at this time in the season? Do they play?
What is their outlook? Do they have a chance to be starters? Et cetera, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think, after what we saw from Christian Hackenberg in the preseason, there's no reason you can expect much at all from him. The best thing you can possibly say about Christian Hackenberg is that he's still very young and there's still time for him to learn. And that's it. And he's got a strong arm. That's it. But a lot of guys have strong arms that make it to the NFL and don't ever become anything. So I would just, based on his price tag and his upside, I would keep him around as a third or fourth quarterback. But I sure as hell wouldn't let his presence stop me from signing, drafting, adding quarterbacks this offseason. And I wouldn't even guarantee his roster spot next year. But you know what? If they want to keep the guy around, listen, sometimes guys sit on the bench for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and then they get a shot and they play well. Look, how long did Jeff Hostetler sit on the bench with the Giants?
Look at John Izek.
Yeah, exactly. John Izek's going to the Hall of Fame.
No, I get it. You look at Aaron Rodgers, but no, it's like obviously I'm assuming Aaron Rodgers probably showed something in practice. I think if I had to put a percentage chance on Hackenberg being a good quarterback, it would be 0. I just really
I'd say about 5% chance he'll be good.
No, I would, Glenn. I honestly would say less than 1%. I see nothing from him. There's not one thing in his game that is progressive. He doesn't fit the ball into tight windows. He doesn't have a really accurate arm. He can't really read defense. Maybe pre-snap he can, but that's a completely different game. Ryan Fitzpatrick could read a defense pre-snap too. Not clean footwork. Just terrible in every aspect. There's really nothing of Hackenberg where you can say he's really good. He has accuracy problems. He can't read a defense post-snap, and I already said accuracy. He hears footsteps a lot. That's like the 3 worst things a quarterback can have that you have to overturn. So
yeah, but have you seen his charisma? Huh? I mean,
yeah. Do you see his comb over?
Off the charts charisma and a great smile.
He looks like a quarterback, Glenn. That's why he's going to be good.
He looks the part, 6'4", stands tall in the pocket, rifle for an arm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Lamar Jackson will never be good because he doesn't look like a quarterback. Even though, honestly, I'm hearing a lot of interest between the Jets, and I don't know how confirmed or how real these sources are, but the Jets really like Lamar Jackson, and we'll see what happens with that.
This time of year, everyone is so full of it.
Glenn, what do we say? Like every time we start talking about like free agency and draft, and this guy said this and that guy said that's right. Smoke screen or just do not listen to it because less than 1% of the stuff you hear has any validity to it where it's he's really talking to this guy and no, it's a guess.
And the terrible thing is, Joe, these guys, I'm not going to say names, but I've heard.
Say a name. Give me one name.
No, I'm not. But I've heard
Jason Cole.
Well, funny enough, the thing with Jason Cole, I actually was able to reach out to somebody who's familiar with him, and because I saw a few things from him that I thought, I think this guy's just kind of blowing smoke. So I contacted someone who knows some insider media people, and I said, "Come on,
smoke screen."
I said, "Give me the scoop on Jason Cole. Like, is this guy legit or is he just making stuff up?" And he said, Jason Cole didn't say how or why he has these relationships. But he said Jason Cole is super tight with a lot of agents. Like now agents, of course, are going to put out stories that they want to put out.
That's exactly what it is.
But at least Jason Cole at least as far as I know, isn't making stuff up. And you hear that about guys because listen, you or me could go on Twitter. We could go on whether it's our Twitter or, a JetNation retweet. It's 17,000, 18,000 followers. We can say something and just say, source confirms Jets, blah, blah, blah. It gets retweets, chases it down. It's got a life cycle of a couple of days. It gets your name out there. Well, I think a lot of these guys, when they need some love and some attention, they I've been told that there's no chance this will happen.
Hold on, Glenn, breaking news here. Sources have told me that the Jets are probably going to cut Muhammad Wilkerson after this year. Really, really connected source. He just texted me that, so I just want to let everybody know. I can't say his name or anything like that. But
this is a source I really trust. Just texted me this minute. He's never let me down before, so highly reliable, but can't confirm at this time. But keep your eye out for that this offseason.
Glenn, I'm getting another one.
Oh boy!
The
wow! I hope people are tuning in. All this breaking news.
The Jets are planning to use Robbie Anderson vertically the next game. Breaking news.
Ooh! Wow! This is some fantastic stuff.
No, but that's and Glenn, like, to make fun of it when we are, it is what it is. Pick your best guess. It's stupid.
Jets may part ways with Matt Forte this offseason.
Hold on, the Jets need a quarterback. The Jets are interested in Josh Rosen. Hey, guess what, bozo? No shit, they're interested in Josh Rosen.
I saw, dude, when I saw Jet fans melting down and bawling their eyes out because they found out they'd scouted Josh Allen. It's like, they're going to be scouting all these guys. They need a quarterback. This is what happens. If the Jets weren't scouting every quarterback extensively, I would be pissed off.
There'd be a problem.
But the fact that people are mad that the Jets are doing their due diligence and scouting people, like people think that because they're scouting Josh Allen, they must not be scouting anyone else. Oh my God, somebody tweeted that somebody from a school said that they scouted this one guy. So I can't believe they don't like the other guys too.
That's who they're picking. That's who they're picking if he's there at 7, Glenn.
Yeah, and the other thing, and I say this and I try not to be a condescending dick sometimes.
You have to be a condescending dick sometimes. Just be honest.
I get so fed up with people that treat the draft like you only get one pick. Like when you say like they should take this guy in the first round. Oh, take this receiver. Who's going to throw him the ball? Dude, they get other picks. You can trade picks. There are other ways to acquire players, and you get more than one pick in the draft. But everyone falls so in love with that first rounder. If you say take a left tackle, oh God, but they need a running back. There's round 2, there's round 3, there's round 4, there's free agency. Like I can't understand it. I wrote an article a few years ago, saying what was his name? The Sudfeld. Zach Sudfeld, the quarterback coming out of Indiana when Nate was on the Jets, and or is it vice versa? I forget now.
Zach Sudfeld was on the Jets.
And Nate Sudfeld was his brother out of Indiana. And I just wrote an article like, hey, family affair, will the Jets take this guy? Because he did some impressive things in Indiana. He was going to be a late round pick. And I just said, are they going to draft him? Like, I didn't say what round. I just kind of give people enough credit to assume they'll take him in the round he's projected to go in. And a few people, like the way they reacted, I think they were implying that I was suggesting he would be the first round pick. Because they were like, oh my God, this is the worst idea ever. How could you even suggest this? And I'm like, really? Like suggesting a project quarterback in the 6th or 7th round? And I reread the article and I said, oh, I didn't say 6th or 7th round. So these people who think we only get one pick.
People assume something? That's weird.
People are assuming that I think he's the guy they're going to take with the one pick this year. Yeah. Because in the NFL, you only get one draft pick. Yeah. And yeah, it drives me nuts, but I'm kind of used to it at this point. But every now and then I'll just say to somebody, like, you do realize they get more than one pick this year.
Yeah.
Because everyone just first rounder. Anyone you mentioned must be the first rounder.
And to beat a dead horse, Glenn, I just got more breaking news that the Jets are probably going to attend Josh Rosen's pro day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're going to pick him when he's available because they are doing their due diligence and they have however many scouts, hundreds of scouts, whatever it may be, and they're doing their work. It's crazy. It's funny, like you're talking about Twitter, like somebody tweet the Jets are.
Why are they scouting so many quarterbacks, Joe? They can't draft all of them. They're so stupid. They don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah, you can only scout one position. You can scout 2 quarterbacks, 2 or 3, receivers, whatever it is. But it's like funny, like you said, like Twitter, like somebody will tweet the Jets are at USC game looking at Darnold, and like it's like 100 retweets. I'm like, no shit, they're at the game. Like, come on, man. There's college NFL guys at high school games. Like, but okay, because let's just get off of this. We beat that dead horse, but it needed to come out. People are just so stupid sometimes. Like, oh my God, they're at Allen's pro day. They're gonna draft. And it's like, so I stay off of Twitter in the off season. I really do. I'm more happy when I'm off Twitter. But Glenn, moving on. Before we get into the games, it's our last topic. Jaylene Collins, thoughts? 6'1" from LSU. 3 years ago, the draft. This is his 3rd year. or it would be his third year, but he suspended the first 10 games. Like I said, 6'1", 203. I think he ran in the mid 4.4s. Really impressive guy.
4.48, I think.
Yeah, he was a second round pick, and I know that like coming out of college, people are like, okay, he could be a first round pick, but he only started 10 games as at cornerback. There's questions about how he'll develop and that he's raw and stuff like that, but he's a guy with a boatload of talent, the size, the speed, the press ability, not pressability that you want to see from a guy. Yeah, the ability to press. From a guy. So what are your thoughts on signing him? Because you're the one who actually woke up to the news from you, direct messenger me on Twitter. So
yeah, man, I heard about him being cut. Couldn't believe it. I know he's had his issues. He had drug issues in college, drug issues in the pros. So, you kind of figure he's going to continue to have drug issues, but at a price tag of close to nothing, given his talent level, given the fact that two of his former teammates, college teammates from LSU would be in that secondary with him. Jamal Adams and the recently acquired Rashard Robinson, all LSU products. So
yeah.
If that could and LSU, man, they just churn out talent. LSU is just a talent factory. So, and he fits that mold. The Jets are probably, Mike McCagnon is probably saying, damn, this guy's a better prospect and along the same lines as Rashard Robinson. And now he's out there for nothing. I could have kept that draft pick because he has cleared waivers. I just got a text from a source that I can't name, but you will see that he has cleared waivers. And I say go for it, man. Low risk, high reward, because if he shows up and he looks at somebody wrong, you just cut him. You don't have to keep him around. It's close to no financial obligation, and graded out as a very good cornerback last season. And I read quotes from one executive at the Combine when he was getting drafted, who said, don't be surprised if he ends up being the best corner in this class.
Yeah, and when Trufant went down last year, he did play very well. I know he was rated very highly for second-year corners, et cetera, via Pro Football Focus. I forget what the exact stats were, but just watching with your naked eye, watching the Falcons last year, they were one of the best teams in the NFL. So you probably watched him a lot. He was playing well, and he wasn't getting abused. Coming up from a backup spot, like you said, 6'1", 200 plus pounds. I just looked at 4.48, so still really good speed for a guy of that size. He had 2016, he got suspended for 4 games for PEDs. This year, 10 games for PEDs, so he has to keep his head out of his ass a little bit. But if it is a low risk with a high reward type of deal, it obviously depends on how much money does he want, how much guaranteed money does he want? Is he going to agree to a drug settlement where if he does this, he's not going to get this money or this money's guaranteed, whatever it may be? How are they going to negotiate it? But if the Jets can get that leg up and they can negotiate the contract that they're comfortable with, where they're not guaranteeing him a lot, and there's some, incentives in there for how many games he plays if he gets suspended, that kind of stuff, then do it. I'm fine with that. It's not like he's beating up women or doing this stuff. He's taking PEDs, so he's not going to be a huge locker room problem. As a guy like a Sheldon Wood or a Marshall Wood. Yeah, nothing that I've heard of. I did some research today. I haven't heard any stories or anything like that, but that's not to say he's not a locker room problem. But, I would do it too, depending on the contract, obviously, Glenn. Now let's get into the Panthers game a little bit. We're not going to do too much on it, but, general thoughts about their depth chart, some guys, offensive line. They have guys like Ryan Khalil, who's a center, who's, pretty good. Center in this league. I know they have Khalil, left tackle, who's not really that good. I think it's Matt Khalil. So their offensive line is shaky at best. They have Stewart at running back, who's okay, but I think the only guys who really worry me on their offense are McCaffrey and Cam Newton. The receivers, guys like Devin Funchess aren't really scaring me. So their offense is okay. Now, when you look at the defense, Charles Johnson, Star Lotulelei, and Kawan Short and Thomas Davis and Shaq Thompson and Luke Kuechly, that's when you start to worry. Their front seven's really good. The safeties, Mike Adams and Kurt Coleman, and then Bradbury and Worley as their corners, not really too great, but their front seven is super, super strong. I think they're actually, what's this? Their rush defense is allowing 68.5 yards per game, which is the second fewest in the NFL. Really stout front seven that they have over there. So what is your thoughts, I guess, on the Panthers, roster?
Yeah, I think they're strong in the middle. Especially at linebacker. Of course, you mentioned Kuechly, one of the best in the business. You've got Kawan Short in the middle of that defense on that D line, and their strong side backer Thomas Davis. He does a really nice job. So they have some players to worry about there. Their O-line is all right, but Khalil has struggled. I looked at him earlier, watched a little bit of film on him, and then looked at his grade, his PFF grade. He's sitting at 44.7 for them, which is surprising.
Ooh, that's like James Carpenter low.
Yeah, I thought we'd see some better play out of him, but that hasn't been the case. So they have some vulnerabilities, at the corner spots. Kevon Seymour not really having a great season there. And, of course, Robbie Anderson, hopefully take advantage of him or James Bradbury.
Yeah, and Glenn, and just really to interrupt you too, Bradbury, he's a guy who doesn't have a lot of speed. I think if there's one place the Jets can take advantage of them, it is with Robbie Anderson because their corners and their secondary really isn't that speedy. Yeah,
exactly. And that's, they do have the opportunity to possibly create some mismatches. If you get Austin Seferian-Jenkins lined up on Mike Adams or something along those lines, I think the Jets will have an opportunity to make some things happen. But you can't count out Cam Newton. The guy is just such a difference maker. Uses his legs really well. I could see him. Somebody like a Darren Lee is going to have a really tough time against him one-on-one. If he gets ahead of steam, we could see some big runs from Cam Newton. But I wouldn't say this Carolina team is unbeatable. But I do think they do present some issues for the Jets.
Yeah, I'm worried with the Jets too because the Jets are going to have to pass on this defense. And the worry about it is that the Panthers have such a good front seven that they're not one of those teams who's going to have to shut down the run with stacking the box. They don't have to stack the box. They don't have to bring that safety up and creep him up towards the line of scrimmage. They're going to be able to keep him deep and put some extra guys in coverage to shut down guys like Robbie Anderson. So it worries me that the Jets are not going to be able to run the ball on this team. No, they could, but I severely doubt it. They're going to be able to put an extra guy in coverage. So let's see how they're going to really move the ball. On this defense, like I said, the rush D 68.5 yards per game allowed that's really, really good. The offense, I'm worried about Cam Newton on the read option, obviously because the linebackers are a little bit slow and they're not too disciplined. They're still young and learning, so Cam Newton can kill you with that read option. So I'm hoping that the Jets really assign a guy, whoever they feel is the best guy to contain Cam Newton, because a lot of times like read option, what you want to do is you want to assign your best player to Cam Newton. And then every single play, even if he hands it off, you want that guy to attack Cam Newton, so you have to keep handing the ball off and kind of make you beat the Jets with their secondary, option in that read option. So crash hard on Cam Newton, and whether it's the safety or the linebacker who takes that secondary option and fills the middle, we'll see. But crash hard on Cam Newton. And I'm also worried in terms of their offense, Christian McCaffrey.
I was just about to say McCaffrey lined up against these Jets linebackers could cause some problems. This might be a game where he comes away with like 10, 12 receptions if they just pick on Demario Davis and Darren Lee all day. So we'll see how that unfolds.
Yeah, so how are they going to contain the read option with Cam? How is Jordan Jenkins or Josh Martin or Freddie Bishop going to chase him down? I'm not too sure.
No.
So that really is sketchy to me. And then McCaffrey, like you said, Lee has the speed, but I don't think he has the balance to stay with him in some of the really crisp routes that McCaffrey runs. Davis doesn't have the speed to keep up with McCaffrey. Is it going to be Adams, who struggled a little bit in coverage? We'll see. I think McCaffrey will beat him a couple times. So, like I said, you really have to worry about McCaffrey out of the backfield in terms of a receiving threat and the read option. So, I don't necessarily know how they're going to contain the offense. Maybe they probably will stack the box a little bit, and I hope they assign not a linebacker. Obviously, there's going to be plays where Lee or Davis is on him. You can't put, Jamal Adams on McCaffrey every single time, because then they'll isolate that and they'll figure out how to beat you in whatever way they can. But, make sure that you have a guy like Adams on him. I think more often than not in terms of, playing McCaffrey. But, okay, let's move on, Glenn. Well, what is your prediction for this game? Because I know we have to wrap this up a little bit because it's 1:16 in the morning for you. So let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
To wrap up the game, like I said, offense worried about McCaffrey and
yeah, I think that it will allow Carolina to extend some drives. I think it's gonna be a close game, but I'm gonna say 23-17 Carolina.
23-17. I'm going 24. 13 Carolina. It's just I don't see how we're gonna move the ball on that defense. I really don't. Now, Glenn, let's move on to our picks of the week. Let's see. Last week I went 3-2. You went 4-1. So now I'm 31-19. You're 31-19. So we're tied up. Let's see I'm not even able to see the games that we both picked last week. Oh yeah, I am. Okay. So we both picked the Steelers on Thursday night, who beat the Titans 40-17. Mariota was absolutely terrible that game. I don't know what the hell he was doing. We both picked the Rams, who lost 24-7 to the Vikings. We both picked the Saints, who beat the Redskins 34-31. We both picked the Eagles, who beat the Cowboys 37-9 in Dallas. And I picked the Seahawks, and you picked the Falcons. Falcons won 34-31. That missed field goal at the end short just drove me crazy, man. I was like, because I didn't know that Cam Chancellor was out for the year before I picked that. But I was like, I'll stick with it. And then a short field goal, it's like, at least miss left or right. Don't miss short. Like,
Right.
But okay, so like I said, I'm 31-19. So are you. This week there's some good games. First, the Jets game, we both picked them to lose to the Panthers. So we're both taking the Panthers. Thanksgiving, we'll do those games, Glenn. 12:30 on Thanksgiving tomorrow. Everybody drive safe. Please do not drink and drive. This is the DUI capital day of the entire year, the most DUIs in America. So there will be police out looking for people. Trust me. Don't be an idiot. Get an Uber. But Thanksgiving, 12:30. To start it off, the 8-2 Vikings at the 6-4 Lions.
8-2 Vikings. The Vikings are just playing great right now. At the Lions, though.
Yep.
I'm gonna say Minnesota's due for. You know what? No, I'm gonna take Minnesota. I want to take the Lions and say Minnesota's due for a loss, but
damn it,
Minnesota's just playing too well right now.
Yeah, with Case. Should we sign Case Keenum, Glenn? Another topic. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm taking the Vikings too. I was really hoping you're going to take the Lions right there, but the Vikings are just balling out right now. They're playing really well. Adam Thielen's like the number 2 leading receiver in the NFL right now, which is absolutely crazy.
Really?
Yeah, he is. He's really playing well, breaking all those stereotypes about white wide receivers and white skill.
I really do. I spend like every spare second of my life looking at the Jets nowadays. That I used to know the league as a whole a lot better. But since I started writing about the Jets, I don't have time to look at other teams until they're like a couple weeks out as an opponent.
Yeah. Okay, Glenn, next game. Move on to the 4:30 game on Thanksgiving. The 4-6 Chargers at the 5-5 Cowboys.
Oh, Cowboys are falling apart, man. Oh, I'm going with the Chargers. I think that pass rush.
Yeah.
I think they're going to beat the hell out of Dak Prescott and make his life miserable.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chargers tonight. I'm not sure if Smith, their left tackle on the Cowboys, is healthy or not. And going against Bosa, who's a really good pass rush right now, that's sketchy. The offense can't move the ball. They do not like the same team in terms of the offensive line. Can't block for anybody, which is crazy. Just a stark difference from last year.
Yep.
And obviously not having Zeke Hurts. But yeah, I'm taking the Chargers away in that game too. Next game, Glenn, the 2-8 Giants, the night game at the 4-6 Redskins.
Give me the Redskins.
No need to explain, Glenn.
The Giants.
Yeah, I'm taking the Redskins too, but I figured we did 2 Thanksgiving games. Why not do 3? The last game, the best game on Sunday, in my opinion, the 8-2 Saints at the 7-3 Rams.
Ooh. I'm taking the Rams because they're at home and I like them, but that one I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints won it. That matchup I'm taking the home team.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Saints here. I think the Rams are due to come back down to earth a little bit. I think they're a good team, but a team who can really threaten the playoffs. I don't think they're that good. So I think they're gonna fall down a little bit. But that's the end of the show. Hopefully we'll figure out some of the other technical problems that we've been having a little bit. We'll figure it out hopefully by next week. We appreciate everybody for listening. Like I said, go on YouTube, type in JetNation if you want to find us on there, watch the video. We're on the podcast app still. Thank you to our sponsor, Odd Shark. I'm not going to read the entire thing again, but we thank you. We'll read it every week. We promise. But we will see you next Tuesday. Like I said, have a happy and a safe Thanksgiving. Don't be stupid. And then we will get to see you. So, Glenn, any last words?
No, just looking forward to hopefully a well-played game this Sunday. Hopefully they come away with a win, but if not, it's it is what it is.
Yep. Leave us a review, please. We got one this week. Leave us another one. We'd greatly appreciate it. And we'll be back.